Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Innovative, revolutionary, stellar development, purest universal knowledge. In a transformative, futuristic design. The Universal Body Enhancement Spaceship Unit. The very first new evolutionary spaceship technology has been rolled out for mass production. Our Universal Body Enhancement Spaceship Unit is constructed from high-quality materials carefully selected by our team of experts. Embedding the essence of the new GAN's plasma science and technology, it uses collective plasma field technology for changing and enhancing the environment of the body of the man. This new plasma enhancement changes the environment of the body to allow it to return to its natural, balanced, energetic condition, as in the womb of the mother, allowing every cell in the body of the man to find its natural, original field strength balance. The shape and field distribution in this new space plasma technology replicates the inner structure of the universe and replicates the balance fields from which the man was created at the point of inception in the womb of the mother, not only receiving balance in the physical, but also in the emotional sense too. For the first time in the history of man, a system has been developed and delivered which not only enhances the physical body of the man, but also enhances the emotional part of the user of the system, hence reducing and eliminating many problems that could not be solved in the world of science, to bring the body of the man into near perfection, as at the time of birth. This new spaceship technology can be within the reach of every man today and can be ordered by medical practitioners, sports specialists, and healthcare centers. The Universal Enhancement Spaceship Unit, the future you have been waiting for, is here. The journey from space to spaceship technology has started. Every order is subject to a contractual agreement and might require additional accessories priced separately for applications according to each case. You can order or contact us at office@at.kfm.global for additional information.
Hello, friends, neighbors, citizens of the universe, agents of peace. We welcome you here again to the Keshe American Knowledge Team for August 14th, 2022. As we move into this one planet, one nation, one race for world peace, that's one of the questions we're going to play today. Before we go there, though, I would like to read the World Peace Treaty. Again, a prerequisite really for dipping or delving into the depths of the knowledge that's being shared by the Keshe Foundation. And this was one of the prerequisites for man, for us to actually go travel in space, become part of the universal community, is what we call the World Peace Treaty. Having you sign it with a pen or having you sign it with the pen in your soul, although there are no pens in the soul of the man. And as he said, when you go into space, you'll never see anything written but the balance of the fields of the soul of the existence. So this is the World Peace Treaty that the religious leaders will sign, the world leaders will sign, the knowledge seekers have signed. And again, it's between you and your soul. If anyone would like to read it, again, this is a round table. Feel free. If you'd like to read it, we'd welcome you. A very simple document entitled the World Peace Treaty. We, as citizens of the earth, from this moment on, accept to lay down all tools of aggression and war. We, shall never think about getting involved or incite war or develop or use any tools of war on this planet or in space. And to this, we, all agree and swear with my, and you can delete this form as appropriate, depending on who you're signing it for, your nation, your territory, your council, your religion, your city, your town, your body and soul. You can put your name here with your signature, the date, the position, and on behalf of. You can stand in the balance for your nation, your territory, your council, your religion, your city, your town, or as an individual, and have it witnessed. Very simple. The person puts their name, their signature, their date, and their position held. After signing this treaty, be proud to display this certificate wherever you consider being important to you, that everyone can see and know your ethos to fellow men and the mankind and other created beauties of the Creator. So a very simple form. Again, you don't even have to put a pen on it. You can sign it with the soul pen or with your soul directly. So it's between you and your soul that you endorse the World Peace Treaty. To become a private student, Universal Council supporter, or UC member, or anyone else, at least for those three, it is a prerequisite for you to have signed and forward a copy of the World Peace Treaty to the Keshe Foundation. And again, once we reach this level of peace on this planet, and we're getting upgraded in one go as the new systems are going to be coming online. I was very happy to hear Mr. Keshe mention our former president, or perhaps our president actually right now, and that Obama never misses a workshop. He's always lingering in the background. So we know the former president of the United States is as he was the one that requested the key, I think through the ambassador, one of the ambassadors there, and it was forwarded to him. So he's very well aware, as all the world leaders are, and they openly talk amongst themselves of the Keshe Foundation, but it was quite delightful to hear. And I guess they know because of the IP addresses and other security services and so on, and maybe direct communications that's not been made public up to this point, that our former president, and maybe some other former presidents, are listening in to this beautiful knowledge and what's about to take place or is taking place or has been delivered. And just a couple crossing of the T's and dotting of the I's remain before the government start to sign on, as we heard from Mr. Keshe. So hopefully, President Obama, you have also signed the World Peace Treaty. Now, rather than go through our usual clips, which we have a couple arranged, and again, it's about the one planet, one nation, one race, one of the questions, and then we'll conclude from that last workshop, which was like 5 hours and 20 minutes or so, where Mr. Keshe just went on and on answering questions. I think we're going to go to our beloved Alex Skoric, who we are pleased and honored to have in our presence today, who is ready, willing, and able to deliver a beautiful presentation for us today as we continue to expand the knowledge until we reach this one planet, one nation, one race for world peace, at least among the language community groups, as they'll all, as the borders disintegrate, we're all uniting into one. We're going to make a space city out of the entire planet. So Alex, if you're ready, willing, and able to come in now, and you've perhaps finished your tea or what have you, please feel free to take the screen. And since I've just played the disclaimer, I don't think I have to replay it within a minute or two of our opening disclaimer, unless you request it.
No, I'm going to go ahead with that. That's fine. And thank you very much for inviting me here today. I really am honored to be here and be a part of this process. Many times I wonder if, as to the benefits, but I think Friday in Brazil, we saw outstanding testimonials, and maybe we can talk about that after the presentation.
Sure.
So I would like to let me take over the screen, so that'd be a good idea, wouldn't it? Because this is what we're talking about.
Okay, we view your screen.
Okay, so audio, video is okay.
Perfect.
Oh, just give me a second. I gotta adjust the video. One moment, please.
And I know part of that testimony was, I think Josepha was saying it was 38 hours one way and 34 hours back the other way, from Brazil to Linz and from Linz to Brazil. And again, it was just an amazing to hear that much time spent when we can actually move instantaneously, but we'll leave that for later.
Sorry for that interruption.
It's no problem, Alex.
One of these days, we'll get a lot of these technical glitches out of the way, but you know, we have to worry about the content. This is what's important, because we are the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute, and we've all come together here for a very, very important reason. And many of us are still looking for that reason. And that's why this is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings of Plasma Science. We're discussing basic inner space, and today's topic is atmosphere. So as we all take a deep breath and see what's going to transpire today. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is August the 14th, 2022, and this is the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. And so we want to welcome the new knowledge seekers, and of course we want to welcome the mature knowledge seekers. And as this is the North American presentation, we want to welcome the other continents around the world, which is really what makes this presentation so effective. And as we said, we started this series back in Brazil in October of 2020, and we are really seeing the fruits of that labor. So it's been a long journey, and what we're trying to do is to actually make it more concise than the even longer journey that Mr. Keshe has taken. And one of the heroes of the Canadian space program, Mark, as you know, is the hero of the American space program. Rick Cramond is our fearless leader, and he has been doing an outstanding job bringing this technology to all the knowledge seekers who wish to have this. And so what we try to do is to put a basic teaching series together, and I must emphasize the word basic. And if this sounds a little drawn out, it's just so that we understand what we understand and how little we understand. So when we start to put all the knowledge together, we find that, it really isn't that very much. And so we just can't seem to get out of this basic idea. But the problem, you see, is that we've claimed to have been in outer space, and we continue to look to go into outer space. And the real problem, of course, is that we can't even see what's on the dark side of the moon. And we don't really know where this outer space is. So in order to do that, when you're outside, you want to go inside. And so we don't know where outside is. So where exactly is inside? And so that's what we're looking for. And we're still looking for that, because I think once we found the inside, then we'll know how we can go outside. So, and if that sounds complex, it's because we have to sort a few things out, and we have a basis of knowledge now to be able to sort that out. And the first thing we've sorted out is that we've had some boundaries. And one of those boundaries is the magnetosphere that is around this planet. And in between the magnetosphere and the Earth is our atmosphere. And that's the subject that we're going to talk about today. And within this scope, of course, we are always in pursuit of currencies. And we know that there are many, many different types of currencies. But there's obviously the currency of money. And then there's also the currency of life, which is adenosine triphosphate. And then, of course, there's the energy of the universe, which is energy in motion. And, we can't have the whole pie, I guess. So we just want a piece of that pie. And is that pie in the sky, or is it in that little tiny red dot in the bottom right hand corner, what we identify as part of man's universe, and which is actually our Earth space? And so we've tried to identify that on a technical basis with the 3 books of Mr. Keshe, The Universal Order of Creation of Matter, and we kind of say, well, the matter is the source. Well, is the matter the source? And then when we look at the origin of the universe, well, that seems to be more of the source, but the origin of the universe is very much tied into our souls. And so there's a link in between, and that is the structure of light. And so we're trying to find out where exactly is this outer space, because we haven't described it there. And of course, when we look into the sky and we find that there's no point in the sky really which is identifiable. because there's so many different places in the sky, and so when we look at what nebulous kind of is derived from, we find that, well, Nebo is mentioned in the Bible as a place where Moses was granted the view of the promised land before his death. And so this is a historical reference. And of course, Nebo means sky. So nebulous point is somewhere in the sky. And as I already said, we only want that pie in the sky. So history seems to repeat itself. And what it tends to do is repeat the boundaries of thought. And I seem to be repeating myself with these classes here because we just haven't found outer space yet. And we're told that historically that, we've been in outer space, but, we just can't seem to find where exactly that is. So that's what we're doing. We're searching for outer space. And before we can do that, it has to begin with the search for inner space. So let's carry on and see that, we are all here on this planet, and somehow we got here, and we got here in safety because we're still here. And somehow we've navigated through our life in safety, those of us who are here. But what's interesting, of course, is that all of these targets are moving. They're continually moving. And so if we just look at this relationship between the Earth and the Sun, the Earth is rotating around the Sun. And of course, there are different seasons. And there are 365 days in the year, they say. And, every one of those days is a birthday, is someone's birthday. And so, where exactly was this target when they arrived here? So, clearly, because the target is moving, the landing point on this target is also moving. And we did this somehow, and we're not exactly sure how we did this, even though we claim to want to go into outer space. So, we have to look at the plasma rules and see that the rules of the game of life are based on a different set of rules than what we've been taught in school. So first of all is that energy states can increase and they can decrease. And this is done by at least an order of magnitude. But significantly, the higher energy state feeds the lower energy state. So we have a nebulous reference of what is higher and what is lower. But the thing is that from every point that you are, you can manifest through a natural creation or a natural decay. But now we are coming closer to the realization that the energy transfer can be catalytic. And we understand catalytic from our catalytic converters on our car. The catalytic converters are non-consuming, but the fuel that we dump into the carburetor is being consumed. And so this is how we deal with our environmental situation. And one of the other things, of course, we find is that energy is transferred between these rates, and it's transferred by many orders of magnitude higher in the higher states. So even the transfer rates are not the same. And as we identify all of these states, in order to identify them, we have to create a barrier. And so these are the plasma rules. So plasma is a barrier of fields. And once we've said that, then we also understand that there are fields and energy can go into these fields. So it has to cross that barrier. And when it crosses that barrier, then plasma is absorbed into these fields. But there's another overriding rule, which is non-visible and non-tangible. And that has to do with the ethos of the universe. And that in itself is also a boundary insofar as it's binding. And so when we look at nebulous meanings, product quality is a nebulous reference because it doesn't tell you what type of product. and it doesn't tell you what kind of quality. And it doesn't tell you where, and it doesn't tell you when. It doesn't even tell you which space. It's just a nebulous positioning. And so, if you want to understand the physical manifestation of the plasma reality, you have to have a specific product quality. And when you start to specify that product quality, then you start to specify the boundaries. So we are creating some boundaries, but overall, our main point of reference is the sun. And so the area of our interest is in this sun space. And the sun is a star. And the name of this star is Sun. There are other stars, and these stars are hard to see sometimes. But what's most important for us, of course, is where are we? And so we find ourselves with a relationship to this sun as a place where we have created boundaries, which we call orbits around the sun. So to determine our position, we have to identify what we're not. So clearly we're not on Venus, and clearly we're not on Mars. So clearly we are on Earth. So, okay, well, we're not Christopher Columbus either. This is an important point to understand that this is fundamental to boundary creation. And our interest is Earth. And we have a sentimental attachment to this Earth. And so this Earth is our own little tiny sentimental pie in the sky. And in the Earth, of course, so now we are in Earth space. And as we've discussed, within the Earth space, we have other transition ranges. And so these ranges go between what we've identified now as the magnetosphere, and that is our magnetical boundary of what we consider as Earth space. And the other boundary, of course, is the ground. And today we're going to talk about the atmosphere. And what we see is that these different ranges within our Earth space are identified and based on density. And so the higher we go, the lower the density. And we found then, or we said historically, that once we go beyond the magnetosphere, that we've gone into outer space. But we've already examined the magnetosphere last week, and we can't find outer space anywhere out there. The only thing that we found was other spaces. And many of these spaces were still an extension of Earth space. And so what this means is that we are not understanding the fundamental principle of the twinity. And what that has to do with is two fields. One we call the electron field, and the other is the proton field. And these two work together in what we call the atom field as one. But there is a transfer of energy from the magnetical fields. And as we said, the higher strength fields feeds the weaker strength. So the higher strength field is the proton plasma field, and the weaker field is the electron plasma field. So there we have a relationship of two, and this is the point now. When we look at the surface to volume ratios, we can't go just work with the two dimensions. The two dimensions are feeding us. What we look at is our Earth. We know that it's round. And we know that because when we have a baby, and when I say we have a baby, the carrier of the baby, of course, is the woman. And when you look at the belly, of course, it's round. And you don't see the imprint on the belly of hands or feet or a nose or a head. It's round. And so one and one, the man and the woman, created more than two. So we had two feeding dimensions, and now we have a third feedback dimension. And we find that we can't really mathematically define these because we've introduced that pi again, which is 3 and 0.14 and a bit and a bit and a bit. We don't know what that bit is. We can't pinpoint that bit, but we do have to carry that bit as our observation. And seeing as we're the observers, and that observation is a fudge factor, then we are also the fudgers. And we are none of these three dimensions. We're in fact in a fourth dimension. And so where exactly is that fourth dimension? So when we look at the cup of life and we see that what we've done is we've taken two physical things, like a zinc plate and a copper coil, and we put that inside a physical cup. And when we added a nano-coated copper coil in the center, we kind of changed the atmosphere. And that atmosphere is between the magnetical and gravitational field forces within that cup. And then a stunning thing happened. We got this GANS. And so we've identified this GANS now as CO2 GANS, calcium carbonate GANS, zinc GANS, copper GANS, amino acid GANS, and water GANS. And so we started with those elements that I described, and somehow we got more. And it wasn't just one more, it was many more. And still, we still have the zinc plate and the copper coil and the nano-coated copper coil. So we didn't just have 1 plus 1 and convert it to 2, because we still have the 1 plus 1. But now we have more than 2. In fact, we still have the 1 plus the 1, and maybe in this case, we have 6 more. So 1 plus 1 is 8, arbitrarily. Isn't that possible? So when we look at these cups of life and we compare that to our space room, which is in our launch center. And so we had 3 seats on the left, which is the launch pad, and we had 3 seats on the right, which is our arrival pad. So we had, within the same room, we had a departure lounge and an arrivals lounge. And then, interestingly enough, when we moved from these chairs, we didn't just stay in one, but we crossed over to the other. In other words, in chair number 1 in the departure lounge, we crossed over to chair number 2 in the arrivals lounge, and then from chair number 2 there, crossed back over to chair number 3 in the departure lounge. And then we also had an opportunity to move within 2 different enhancement units. And not only that, but within the enhancement units, we had another 2 chair possibilities. And then when we came back, we went in a similar crossover path from the arrival lounge to the departure lounge, back to the arrival lounge. And we find this similarity in how we designed the twin cups. And so the twin cups are 2 fields. And in this case, we have 2 fields which are claimed to be identical, but it's impossible to have 2 things identical because, as we said before, the target is continually moving. But, what's interesting here is that it is these 2 fields were able to create something else. And some of those things that we created are created by an unseen hand, because what created these fields is not there anymore. And we all know what was in these fields because we've made the cups of life, didn't we? When we made these cups of life, we added water and we added a salt to that water, right? And then we created different cups of different strengths. And so we did define one of them as the emotional cup and one as the physical cup. And now here we are, 2.5 years later, still needing to produce the cups of life. And we're finding how it's not only even more important today to produce this GANS and this plasma water, but it's even more important to share that with our environment and specifically flush it down the drain or flush it down the toilet, because we are in Earth space. And so if we want to keep these apart, then when we make the cups, keep them at least 1 meter apart. But if we can put them together and add the other cups, such as the cup of soul, now you have a base. Cup of soul, cup of emotion, and a cup of physicality. Where exactly is this base? And so you find that's in an earth space. So we have the cup of earth. And so we have one, the cup of soul, and we have one, the cup of the earth, and we have the interaction, and that will be cup number 4, the cup of inertia. But when we look at the GANS, there's something different about the GANS than when we look at the periodic tables, because what we see there are we see the details of the Earth space. And so individually, we're able to break these down into their basic atomic structure. And so they're elementary. That's why it's called a periodic table of elements. And we know from our plasma science that when we take carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen together, we form an amino acid. And we know that nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen are part of our atmosphere. And carbon is a solid. So in order for carbon to be part of the atmosphere, it can't go alone. It can't be elemental. It has to go with oxygen. But does it only have to go with oxygen? It could also just go with hydrogen. But does it just have to go with hydrogen? And so we find that it could go with nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen in combination. So when we take 1 plus 1, we don't know if it's 2, 3, 4, or however many. And to make things even more interesting, we're only talking about the atmosphere. We're not talking about the seas, the lakes, and the oceans. And so we have a relationship with sodium, magnesium, potassium, and calcium, which is part of the saline solution, the electrolyte. And that's part of the inertia. Inertia with what? Well, if we have the one, the amino acid, and then we have another one, that's our earth space. And then within that earth space, we have the copper, zinc, and the iron. And these are very important specifically to us, but we can also look at silicon, which is specifically very important to Earth, but we find that we share that importance. And in fact, the Earth shares the importance of carbon. So the whole question of saying if carbon is organic and silicon is inorganic, that becomes a nebulous reference and totally redundant, because all of these are Earth space details. So there's some kind of overlapping here. There's some kind of common denominator here between our Earth space, our man space, and our atmosphere. And so, as we said, the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. So we have these two fields interacting, but it seems like a one-way street. And of course, it's not a one-way street. It's a representation of two forces coming together. And so as these forces come together, they're coming from a feeding. And once they come together, that is the feedback. And so the next question is, what does it feedback to? And so there are two options that we have on this planet, and we seem to have taken the one of least yield. In other words, not the common denominator, but the lowest common denominator. And we say the lowest common denominator because in the process, as the higher feeds the weaker, so the energy is coming towards the weaker. And so the weaker then, by seeking the lowest common denominator, is actually seeking to be even weaker still. Really doesn't make any sense, does it? And so this becomes a kind of self-consumption. And it indeed is a self-consumption. And so what loosh harvesting is a self-consumption. And you say, well, wait a second, loosh harvesting is a consumption of other selves. But in order to maintain that, because we're weaker, we have to expend energy to do that. So the byproduct of loosh harvesting, that is to steal energy from others, causes us to consume more energy. And so the byproduct is the self-consumption. So you see, the product quality is what we're talking about here. And when we look at the universal harvesting, it's self-enhancement. In other words, it's of a higher energy state, a higher quality. And so what we have to look at when fields come together, if there is a conflict point. And so we find that that conflict point is not really us. What's us is what causes the conflict point, the conflict field. And so we are not what we think we are. We are what created us. And this is the point. And so we have to understand when these forces come together, we see different examples of reactions and products from these forces. And so they can be a flash, or they can be a glow, or they can just be glitter. Well, wouldn't it be nice if it was a shining example? And the examples that we have is not very shiny, it's a binding example, because what we're doing is we're stealing energy at the expense of others. And so now we can identify what manifestation consists of and define manifestation. And we see that it is a perception of reality. And that reality is when two fields come together to form another. So in other words, the formation of any field is this manifestation. And so the plasma field is of a higher energy, and it feeds to the lower energy. So the plasma feeding is what leads to this manifestation. But manifestation could be non-tangible or tangible, non-visible or visible. And so we found that there is a plasmatic reality and there's a physical reality. But then there's another kind of reality, and that is the emotion of presence. And how does that fit in to all of these manifestation points? And the one overriding feature of this, since we want to launch from our manifestation point and target some other manifestation point, is that we still haven't seen where outer space is. And so we have this duality where we see that matter state with a small m is physical, and mattergen state with a capital M is plasmatic. And so these are two different plasma spectrum. And so one is feeding and one is the feedback, but not only. In other words, the feedback can feed to the feeding. And then the feeding can be the feeding feedback to the feedback. Now, that sounds like double talk. Check the news and you'll see what double talk really means. And so we have to look at what is the exact common denominator here. And then we're told that life is an illusion. And so what we think is shiny and gold is just a glitter. And so the fact that we were born was just a glint in daddy's eye. And these are all nebulous reference fields. But at no point or any point can we identify the launch point or the landing point with these kind of nebulous reference fields. So far through this pursuit, we have never found outer space. And so really man has never launched a rocket into outer space. But it's not to say that man hasn't been in outer space. It's just that we have been told that we have no choices. So let's investigate this further because we see that the PM ticks are everywhere and they are feeding us magnetical energy in packets. And they come together in a maggrav condition, which we have identified component-wise as being principal matter, transition matter, and convergence matter. And of course, that's one. And where's the other one? So we're talking about Earth space, so that's the other one. And then the interaction between the two is the inertia. And so all of this is based on the magnetical field force principles of attraction and repulsion, which we refer to as gravitational and magnetical field forces. And these field forces are constantly feeding and constantly feeding back. And so, which one is the higher strength? And when we look at our atmosphere, we see that the ground is the stronger. So we didn't get born in the ground, we got born in the womb. And then from the womb, we came into our atmosphere. And so what we don't know is this model of what we call nuclear decay of the neutron, where we see the neutron break down into electron-proton combination, which we call an atom, and then the release of these PM ticks. And when I say we don't know if this is outer space. We're still looking for inner space, and we haven't specified if this is Earth space, although on the periodic table of elements, we are specifying that is physical space. But when we look at our GANS materials, we haven't specified where those come from. They just seem to come from the atmosphere. And the atmosphere doesn't appear to be that physical, but actually it is physical. And we know that because when we send a rocket up, we have to cross the magnetosphere. And the reason we have to do that is because we have to go through this atmosphere. And then once we get beyond the magnetosphere, we can shut the rocket off. However, we have to have retro rockets to adjust our position continually because you see, we've never really left Earth space. And wherever we're going, we could be in another space. So be it moon space or be it Mars space. And then during the trip, we're in that in-between space. So we've got this kind of nebulous relationship. So for instance, if we were to apply the electron-proton relationship to the moon and the Earth, then we could say that the Earth is the proton and the moon is the electron. But you see, the moon rotates around the Earth. And do we know that for sure? Because the Earth is also rotating. So in relationship to the Earth and the moon, it seems like the moon is moving. And is the space in between the Earth and the moon also moving? So we really got to make sure that we understand our target practice. But either way, we found that the Earth to the moon relationship is part of moon space, right? If we get to the moon. But that moon space is actually part of the Earth space. At no point is it outer space, right? So we find that the moon space is part of the Earth space. So the atmosphere, which is bound by the magnetosphere, is not the boundary of the Earth space, but the Earth space passes through the magnetosphere and actually goes up to the moon space. So in truth, the Earth space target range is between the ground and the moon space, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the magnetosphere, beyond the in-between space. But we had a preference here. And that preference was to find the point here on Earth. And we didn't even say where on Earth. And then when we get into this Earth space, we know that the Earth space is part of the sun space. And so how do we know this? And that is because when we see the sun, we see the blue sky. But it's interesting, we don't see anything past the blue sky. However, on some special occasions, we can see the moon during the day. And so we find that this sky seems to be a boundary that coincides with the magnetosphere, because we can't see the sky beyond that. But sometimes we can see the moon. So what that means is that that sky isn't invisible, it's translucent. So the sky is still there. It's still there in its physicality, but we can see through it. And maybe we can see this moon. But now what happens? We take this sky away. I'm sorry, we take the sun away. Well, we take the sun away, we took the sky away. Where's the sky? Well, the sky is gone. Well, is the sky really gone? Because we no longer see the blue sky. So did this thing disappear? Is it non-visible? Or is it transparent? Because if it's transparent, that means it's still physical. So what we're saying is that the atmosphere we know is physical because we need a rocket to get out of the atmosphere. And we know that the magnetosphere is physical because we can see that boundary. But now we can see through that boundary. And during the sunny period, it's translucent. And during the night, it's transparent. And then we can see all those other stars. But those other stars are all part of the relationship with our solar system. And our sun is a star. So, which is it? Why is our sun star so much more brighter than the other stars? trying to answer questions, not ask for questions. And so when we look at the planet space, here's something we find. Within the sun space, we have an Earth space and a Mars space. And so there is this overlapping because at some point the Earth is between Mars and the Sun. And the Earth is part of the Sun space, and Mars is part of the Sun space. So both are part of the same space. Well, how can both be planet spaces part of another space? And so the way we do this is to overlap it. So we understand that because when we have a graphic like this, to assemble this picture, it's done with a bunch of overlays. And so each overlay is transparent. And when you put the overlays together, you can't see the transparent part, but you can see the physicality. You can see the physicality, and you can see the transparency. And if you can see the transparency, then the transparency is physical. It's not plasmatic, because the plasmatic is non-visible. And on top of that, we have another discussion, and that is about what's more important than Earth space to all of us is our own space, man space. And man space is also part of this nebulous relationship. And where exactly is that? So we're somehow stuck in between somewhere, because there's also another in between space. And so what is the deciding factor for all of these spaces? And we can't see it. So we know it's not outer space because we have satellites, and satellites can orbit. But satellites orbit without a motor, without a rocket. And this is okay because we say atomically the electron rotates around the proton. It doesn't have a rocket either. And you know, with respect to the atomic structure, we know that we have orbitals, and so each of these has their own path, and they have their own boundary, and is based on field strength. But all of these field strengths are based on the same atom. And so if we look at how the sun's relationship to the Earth, that's one orbital, and then the Mars, well, that's another orbital. And then we say the Earth and Mars are satellites. Okay, well, that's fine. So far, so good, except that we have these retro rockets which have to adjust. And what exactly are they adjusting? And so the tendency is to restore itself to the gravitational point. And so if we see a satellite coming near to the magnetosphere, and if it gets too close due to the friction, it might burn up. And so we find that at the point, that boundary point, we have a creation of fire. So the fire is within the magnetosphere, inside the atmosphere, not outside the atmosphere. Not outside in the in-between space, the moon space or the Mars space or wherever space that we send a rocket to. It's only when we get into the atmosphere that we see this fire. And so this fire is kind of this transition zone between the physicality and the atmosphere and the lack of atmosphere. And then when we look at the Gans, we see that the Gans is physical. And it gives us a color, which indicates that is either a zinc GaNs or CO2 GaNs or a combination of both. But inside, we have a hole in that GaNs. And so there's something that caused this hole somewhere in there. And when we say somewhere, that's some nebulous point. And there's a boundary between that hole and the GaNs, but it's not a very definitive boundary. It's just kind of like a fuzzy boundary. So it's got a very nebulous boundary. But the point is that that hole in the GaNs is not where the GaNs has disappeared. It's where the GaNs has accommodated the hole. And the hole is part of the physicality. In fact, the hole is part of the atmosphere inside the GaNs. And so because it is not visible, but because it is physical, then it is transparent. So if it is transparent, that means it's physical and it's not plasmatic. So the hole itself is a feedback. And the feedback is a feeding product of what? We can't see anything. It's all gone. Look, it's vanished. And so this is the point. This is the point. We're not describing, when we describe in physical science, our proper understanding of natural creation and natural decay, because you see in science, this is all based on the PM ticks, which are rays in motion. And rays in motion part of the creation. And the creation can be in a higher energy state or in a lower energy state. And in fact, it has to be in the two adjoining states. It has to be in the neighboring states. And there is a boundary between neighboring states. And we don't know what that boundary is because we can't see it. And so we just fudge it and say, well, there's got to be a binding there because we could see the byproduct. And so that's exactly what we see when we see the two rainbows. And when we look in there and we say, well, inside the first rainbow, it's part of the Earth space, and outside of the second rainbow, well, that's part of Earth space. But, you know, that's not me. What's me is in between, because I'm the product of the two. And so we find that there's a direct link between that and our peace dome. And still we haven't identified outer space. And we haven't even identified man space. All that we're seeing is the spectrum of the fields, where we see a plasmatic manifestation, which we call the feeding radiance. And then we may see a physical manifestation, which is the feedback radiance. And the thing about this radiance is that it goes beyond the boundary of the space. And that boundary is non-specific. In other words, it could be physical, which would be like the ground. It could be atmospheric, like a gas, or it could be beyond the magnetosphere, which is in that in-between space. And then there's motion. And so there's no accounting for that either, is there? Because all we're seeing, the byproduct, is the motion of that field. So we're not seeing the magnetical gravitational contribution to that motion. All what we're seeing is the manifestation when two fields come together, which we call a magrav. Did we say it's plasmatic or did we say it's physical? No. All what we're trying to do is understand this dynamic plasma boundary with all of these nebulous references. And so all of these nebulous references are based on ray creation, ray emission, and ray absorption. And if there's a reference, then it's more than two. Well, it's at least two, but it can't be just two. because you still have the one and you still have the other one. And then you create another one. So you have more than what you start with. And that's how creation works. So we see that there's a plasmatic spectrum and a physicality spectrum, and we see that there's a covalent bond. And we are zeroing in on what we see as the inner space. So if that's where the inner space, it just seems to be logical that the inner space is inside. And so when we look at the rotating hemispheres on this planet, we find that there's a north space and a south space to this earth space. And the boundary is this equator, but we're somehow crossing over this boundary, and then we are within this earth space and we're kind of caught in between. And wherever we are, we're standing on the ground and looking up to the sky. And when we look up to the sky, we have to look through the atmosphere. And somewhere in between the ground and the sky, we see clouds. And these clouds move with the wind. And from these clouds comes the rain. None of these three come from the ground or from the magnetosphere. They come from the atmosphere. Where exactly in the atmosphere do they come from? Because the atmosphere is that in-between space between the ground and the magnetosphere. So the atmosphere is a byproduct of the combination of the magnetosphere and the ground sphere, and they overlap. So the atmosphere is also overlapping. But we still don't see where this comes from. All we see is the byproduct. So as we've been talking about the soul sequencing, we see that the sun has a soul and the earth has a soul, and the combination of those two attracts the soul of man, and they converge together. So now that we have a soul of man, and this is what's important in this dialogue, is us. We're the ones who are important. And so we interact with the soul of the earth. Now we've attracted the soul of the body. Now that we have the soul of the body, interact soul of the earth and manifest the physicality of the body. So these are the default pathways of manifestation. So when we look at the soul of the earth relationship, we know that we have physicality of the body and we have a soul of the body. And we know that we have a proton and we have an atom, and we know we have a sun and we have an earth. Well, wouldn't it stand to reason that we have a physicality of the earth body and a soul of the earth body? And so maybe that's where the inner space is, because it's certainly not in the atmosphere. And then we haven't even talked about the nuclear science, because that is even more dense. When you look at the periodic table of elements, those elements have a higher atomic energy, which means they're more gravitational. And so what is the limiting factor here? And this is the ethos of the universe, which we talked about at the beginning. And that deals with morality, compassion, and courage. And why is that? And that is because what we're talking about is the creation of life, and life wants to live. And so if life wants to live, anything that's opposed to this life-giving, shall we say, process, is against the plasma rules. And so the plasma will not respond to that. So we have an opportunity in the physical reality to violate the universal rules. And as we violate these universal rules, and one of the most harmful ways to violate these rules is by creating garbage. And so it's not my garbage. I'm just going to throw it away over the fence into another field. And so we say, well, that's my garbage over there. This is not my garbage here in the middle. Well, you know what? That garbage cannot be thrown away. It's still there, and you created it. So, when you look at that garbage, you are a reflection of that garbage. And so that's one feedback feeding another feedback. It's all about the feedback. So what you create and what you give your time and attention to becomes very, very important, because like a boomerang, it keeps coming back. And so the discussion is about not just Earth space, and we're still looking for inner space and outer space, but all of this deals with man space, because man space specifically targeted the atmosphere. When we came here, we didn't go beyond the magnetosphere, and we didn't go below the crust. We didn't even hit the atmosphere. What we did, we took an intermediary stop in Mama's womb. And it is from Mama's womb that we came into the atmosphere. So our man space is actually part of the atmosphere of the Earth space. And you know what? The vertical people are also in this atmosphere. And so, is it just man space? It's also vertical people space, isn't it? And if we zero in on the flower in the middle, we find that there's a bee on the flower. And so this bumblebee is in our space, but the bumblebee is in the bumblebee space. So the bumblebee space is overlapping the vertical people space, is overlapping the man space. And then, of course, you have an unfortunate case where the Premier of Ontario swallows a bee on Friday. And so now the bee becomes part of the Ontario Premier space. So all of these spaces are overlapping. And then there's this other thing, this emotion energy manifestation. And we have to question. We've come to a point where we have a debate between peace and prosperity and war and poverty. And I don't understand why any thinking man in this world would be debating this subject. All we have to do is to unlock the gateway to the inner space of the earth body. Because now we understand that there are overlapping fields with overlapping boundaries. And so there are man-made laws and there are universal laws. And there's a universal role of man within these laws. There's also a universal role of angels. And so these angels can transcend these boundaries as well. So what exactly is an angel? What exactly is a universal community member? And what exactly is a man? And keep asking more questions. But the thing is, what we're answering is how the universe is created. It exists from energy, and energy is always in motion. And the fact is that all things are working in combination. And so when we look at the universal order of creation, and yes, we've created one field, but that field is a combination of three fields. And then those combinations work together with another combination of three fields. So, maybe it's 1 and 1 is more than 2, or is it maybe 3 plus 3 is more than 6? How many combinations are there? How big is large? I don't know. But I'll tell you, when I see this plasma dandelion, which is 1 meter tall, I'm thinking, whoa, I've never seen a dandelion that tall until I introduced the plasma fields. And so everything that we see is really a reflection. And what we don't see is the emission. So what we don't see is what caused this dandelion to be so big. But I can tell you that it was the plasma fields that were planted around the dandelion field. So what we're saying is, when you're looking at the blue genes, you understand that they're not blue. They're every other color except blue. And when you're looking at the green, you know that they're not green either. And so this is the thing. When we look at history, we see that maybe our history is not what we thought. And what we thought created boundaries. And we've been repeating those boundaries, and we have to look and understanding how the universe works. And so when we look at our target was the atmosphere on Earth. And the reason it's the atmosphere is because there's a gradient. There's a gradient charge. And this gradient charge is gravitational. Where did the charge come from? And so we find that the charge is a feeding pack that is coming from the universe. And it's not one charge, it's a composite charge. And these are all plasma charges. And so the creation in the atmosphere is a dilution of these composite plasma charges. And so we've seen the amino acid, but the dilution of the charges that created the amino acid, we can't see. And all of us came into this atmosphere, but all of us are unique. And so this dilution also creates variety, the spice of life. And so we're still looking for that inner space, because none of this is identifying outer space, per se. So this is what we know. Man is inherently peaceful. And if we want to cross that peace bridge and join the universal community, then we have to stop being warmongers. And so this is where the plasma energy takes over. And so when someone asks you to define plasma energy, tell them it's a kind of energy state. And it helps us understand our Earth space and how we can transcend those limitations of science. And today, more than ever, it's more important than anything. More important than anything on this Earth. And more important than anything in our universe. Because there is a link, there's an emotional energy manifestation that is connected to the inner space of our bodies. And this is the feedback of another feedback to another feedback. And all we have to determine is, are we binding or are we creating? And so the vision enhancement units, which we wish to give as a gift to the US military, and for some reason there is an opposition, which I don't understand, but facilitates a plasma interaction with this inner space emotion energy to create a different kind of manifestation, refugium manifestation, which is the default pathway back to the way we were born in this atmosphere. And so, can we say that we were born as in terms of materialization? Somehow, some way, we crossed over no man's land. And so we are always wanting to find that place where science meets the soul of man for peace. And so there is no physical place for that. There are overlapping relationships. We have the scientific community needs to own up to their responsibility, and we have the spiritual scientists need to own up to their responsibility and add these two together with the plasma science and speed up the rate of change so that we better understand these field relationships, which they themselves are overlapping, and to understand that it's not just about Earth space, it's about the inner space. And when we understand this inner space, then we'll find the outer space. We have to create an atmosphere of peace. And we have an existential crisis where we have to harvest the plasma energy of the plasma universe. And so we see that there is a magnetical overlapping where we have our Earth space and we have our peace dome. And this peace dome is within our atmosphere. And if we have a magnetical overlapping, then we also have a gravitational overlapping. And if there's an overlapping, how can you see if it's not visible? If it is transparent, it is physical. If it is non-visible, it is plasmatic. So we have no proof of outer space. We only have proof of the transparency from the Earth space to the sun space, to the planet space, to the moon space, and that space in between all of these spaces. But what we do have proof is that we were born. We arrived here somehow. And the way we arrived was using some system somehow. And so the real question is, if we want to launch from here and go somewhere, we obviously want to come back and make that the round trip. However, is it possible? Is it likely that we are only halfway through our trip? In other words, arriving here was the destination, and it's only halfway back. And so if we want to go back, why do we want to go back with a different system from the way we got here? And why can't we go back? And we've already discussed that. Because when we look at the problems, really problems are just an absence of the solution. And the solutions are absent because the evidence is absent. And so we say, well, our Earth space problems are really because we haven't found our inner space. And if we haven't found our inner space, then our outer space problems are the same, because then we can't find our outer space. And all of this becomes some nebulous point, somewhere, somehow. And until June the 6th, most of us were only given the choice of going into outer space with a rocket, and we found that that was a failure. But now we're in the post-June space, post-June 6th space, where we have choices. And the definitive thing is that we all got here when we were born safely. And all those who have gone through our space center have left and come back safely. The universe is a benevolent place. No room for warmongers. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute teachings on plasma science, calling all Earth space patriots. There is a World Peace Treaty. Sign it. Sign it with your heart. Sign it with your soul. Sign it with meaning, and put a pen to paper to show the Earth has no boundaries, because plasma science has no limitations. The earthbound, physical, and emotional atmospheric transformation is what we need to manifest here. The transmutation from the transparency point to the manifestation point. To understand that the universal refugium includes all of the universal community. And we are part of the universal community. So we have to relearn these universal overlapping languages of freedom. We have to relearn our inner space. We have to relearn the man-made boundaries of thought. Plasma science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. Welcome to the other space age. Thank you very much, everybody. This is the end of the lesson.
Thank you again, Alex, for your presence and your continued delivering of these teachings, or the sharing, as we like to say. I don't think anyone's here new. I recognize just about every name in the participants list. If there is someone here new, please announce yourself, but I think everyone has been here before, as they say. And of course, we'd like to open up for questions, or everyone has a microphone. That's the reason we all have microphones, so we can all interact. Many of you are seasoned knowledge seekers. Dirk has a thumb up, but not a hand up. Maybe he'd like to say something. And how is your website going, Dirk? I know you had put some of the gas systems on there and so on, and these plasma gas systems create soul elevation. Maybe you'd like to share something.
Well, I was busy in informing the hospitals here in Germany via email about the website, and I hope that some of them recognize that the possibility to change to plasmatic CH4 will be some kind of success. So I don't check the countings or the visits of the website right now, but I made a lot of I send a lot of emails to a lot of hospitals here in Germany.
Thank you.
So you're welcome.
I think they all, well, maybe not at the hospital level, but certainly at the religious world leader level and the president and so on and other services know it works too well. And that this will be, in a way, their own demise. We can hear there's so much in this workshop that Mr. Keshe shared, again, in every workshop. It's in every word, every sentence, every teaching. But it works so well that if they let the cat out of the bag, it will create their own loss of control. And this is the whole dilemma behind it. They know it works.
Yeah, the authority know it works, but I think because gas is getting more expensive here in Germany and in Europe, it's a good opportunity for the hospitals to change from the addiction of pipelines and tankers and yeah, of gas transportation.
And empty beds to go
And
along with
yeah, here in Germany they are not called hospital, they are called Krankenhaus. That means a house of illness. So uh,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But well, if only some react and buy these units, we have a little step further to uh, a better environment.
Definitely. And I think that's how we're, Alex, you mentioned atmosphere a lot today. And when I first heard, Dirk, could you mute while you're not talking? I think we're
Sure.
getting a little feedback, but everyone feel free to come in. But before the Keshe Foundation, and I heard that the planet, some people had called it Gaia, let's say, in the Gnostic, which I studied a very tiny bit, and Gnostic is really a sort of a pejorative term for, they used to call them know-it-alls, or that's what the Gnostic term means. But they talked about Gaia and about, Gaia falling in love with the planet, very similar to what we hear about Mitra. So there's a lot of copying. But just to think that the planet, we've heard it, the third rock from the sun, and under the topsoil and everything, it's just a rock. Of course, there's a lot of internal workings, but I always had a hard time, even though I thought it was possible, I couldn't really see how a planet could actually be a living being. Now we hear Mr. Keshe say that we are living beings living on top of another living being who breathes the atmosphere of this surrounding. So these gas units will not only elevate us and every other creature of the creator on this planet, but the actual planet, the soul of the planet, is going to get elevated through these gas or the plasma gas, which is different again than the matter state gas, which I don't think we're able to fully create it at this point. I know the plasmatic, he says, connects where the matter state sort of fills in a way, and I don't get that clarification really either. And maybe this is why we're going to see, as we heard the message to humanity, where you won't see one or two UFOs anymore, you'll see them by the thousands. I remember Mr. Keshe saying about them coming in a UFO for a dip in the ocean, perhaps taking a sample, because this was a creation of life, a sample of the seawater, not that they couldn't create the seawater in space, but because the original was so valuable. And I know he talked about these gases going into the universe, that even the universal community somehow would, and maybe they just want to come here early for the party, Alex, and enjoy the atmosphere, let's say. Any comments on that?
This is a brilliant observation, Mark, because I didn't want to go into it with this particular class because we're still on the basic teaching. But we have a problem is that Mr. Keshe is racing ahead, like really racing ahead. And it's, difficult for mature students to keep up. And I can just imagine for new students what kind of shock they might be going through. It's just like introducing cars to Aborigines in Australia who have not been exposed to civilization. It's a massive culture shock. So we're trying to gradually bring that across, uh, because we will have many new students coming in the coming years, and each one of them is going to be going through this shock. So, but what you've done is you've stated the difference between the physical atmosphere and the plasmatic atmosphere. So the phenomena with respect to the cup of life is that the question came originally, and this was in the basic teaching classes that I started with, was that the GANs didn't come from the thin air, but rather it came from the fat air. And we know it was fat because we had amino acid, and amino acid is part of the protein, and the protein and is derived from oil. And so oil and water don't mix. And so this is why you have fish in the water, and because the fish are oily and they don't mix with the water. Right? If they did mix with the water, then they'd be just mush. But then so would we, because our cells are also having a combination of oil and water, and it's because of this boundary that we can maintain our physicality. So these boundaries become very, very important. But these boundaries have become a point of selfishness, where we say, well, this is me and this is mine. And so if this is mine, then it's not yours. But, when is it yours? And really and truly, it's only yours when you're there. Because if you leave, well, it's no longer yours, is it? But there has to be some kind of organization, otherwise you'd have this chaos. And so, with respect to the universe, it provides everything that you need, and it manifests itself in the atmosphere. And when I looked at the explanations from the physical science, there was never a satisfactory explanation of where clouds came from or where the rain came from. And then, the clouds are kind of fluffy and the rain's kind of wet, but hailstones are really hard, and they can damage your car and everything else that goes along with it if it's extremely large. And then of course we have snow.
Diane says, thank you, Alex. I always enjoy and learn something from your quote unquote sharing. Blessings. Now, Randy says, Alex, my cup, CuO, has tons of amino acids floating on top. What can I use these amino acids for? Thanks.
Well,
If I could interject while you're thinking about that, Alex.
I try to choose my words carefully.
Remember, copper in the GAN state is non-toxic. But anyway, Mr. Keshe says, we don't force any souls, to accept the technology. This almost sounds like double talk. We don't force any souls. It's not, of course. We don't force any souls to accept this technology. But we create systems which forces them to accept this technology. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, well, you see, Randy's question is really, really good because sometimes you give gold to someone and they think it's garbage. They don't understand gold when they see it. They only see gold when it's shiny. But I I don't want to insult Randy, so this is why I want to be careful for my words because Randy knows how to make GANs and everything. And what he's pointing out is that he is prolific at getting this amino acid. And this is a gift. This is a tremendous gift. So it just shows you how skillful Randy is. And that's what I want to point out, because with the amino acid, it is a connector. Now, I did an experiment, and I did a live experiment demonstration to a gentleman, and the problem with this gentleman is that he was a disbeliever, and so do you believe what you experience, or do you experience what you believe? So anyway, we came to a crisis point, and so we know I just talked about oil and water not mixing. Well, so we took the amino acid off of the cup of life, and we harvested that in a cup, and then we washed our plasma water, and that took a while. I had to wash it several times, but I had some washed water, and I put it in a cup where I was going to make plasma water, and then I took that amino acid that I harvested, and I scooped it up with a plastic spoon, and I put it in the water, and I positioned it in such a way to have the light reflect through the water. And what was very interesting, I don't want to put you on the spot, Mark, but have you done that experiment?
No, not, I mean, I've shined a flashlight through it.
But if I took the amino acid off the top of the water and I put it back into the water, what happened to that amino acid?
Well, when you put it into plain water, it sort of disperses itself. And
That's
it's
exactly what
probably,
happened.
yeah. Mhm.
But oil and water don't mix.
Sorry. Hello, Mark. The display is black now. Thank you.
Alex, you're still sharing the screen. I'm still seeing Alex's screen.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, it must be on your system. I know in the plasma generator class with Joel, Vernie shared with us about using the same copper wire as the wires in the home, and Mr. Keshe has always said use the GANs, the CuO GANs with on top of the wire. But again, this is matter state. I would think the amino acids also can be used in the same way. That's one of the things I was thinking about.
Well, my point is that we seen the amino acid floating on the surface of the cup of life. That's how we harvested it, right? So it's separated. There was a boundary, and we were able to scoop it off the top. But when I added it back to the water, that amino acid dispersed into the water. I didn't have to take a swizzle stick and stir the water up to disperse the amino acid. It dispersed all its own with its own energy. And so just exactly what you said a few moments ago, that energy filled the space. And it only stands to reason that the plasmatic energy is stronger than the physical energy. And what we had done was we washed the water that we harvested from the cup of life, washed it from the salt, right? So that it would become fresh water. We literally diminished the energy in that water. And so this was a living experiment of how we were depleting the energy from the water by dropping down in energy state, from a plasmatic energy state down to a physical energy state. And then we took an amino acid, which we thought was in the physicality, but it wasn't really physical. And the reason I can tell you that is because my disbelieving friend, when he was looking at take the amino acid out of the cup could not see the oil. And frankly, neither could I. But, I just scooped up from the surface. And then I put it in that cup to harvest, and then I took from that cup and I added it to this washed water, which was in the physical state. So I was literally adding the plasmatic amino acid to the physical water. So if the higher energy feeds the lower energy, then it only stands to reason that at a higher energy dispersed into the lower energy. And at that point, we defied the basic principle where oil and water don't mix.
And Randy says, what can I use these amino acids for? And as we've been told through Mr. Keshe, is that there's civilizations that just specialize in amino acids. So I'm sure if you've been playing with amino acids for millions of years, there's so many more things that we can do with them than we're fully aware of at this point.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize, though, to the direct question, is that the amino acid is a connector, and it enhances the strength. It really seriously enhances the strength for whatever plasma field that you're creating. So in the essence, if we were creating this plasma water, that plasma water was actually through the process of washing that water. So through that process, we were actually creating a physical water. So by adding the amino acid to that water, it was elevating the energy state of that water and then speeding up the process of creating a plasma water. And so every time that we want to elevate from a physical state to a plasmatic state, or to facilitate a connection between these states, right, the energy transfer state. So the amino acid is that connection. And so Randy is describing success in generating connectors, more and more connectors. And so I would say that that is a process that he's going through on the road to success.
Lisbeth, are you still having trouble? She sent me a message. The screen is black for long minutes. Maybe you can go out and come back in and it'll refresh, because I'm still seeing Alex still sharing and I'm still seeing the screen.
Yeah, all my systems are up.
Okay, Jacob says all well here. So I think it's something internal on your system, maybe refresh it or so on and so forth. Alex, I found the testimonies from Claudia and Josepha, and I have them queued up. You said you wanted to hear them, but we have both of them here. The actual testimonies in Portuguese were much more emotional than, let's say, Raphael reading the translation in a way. But both of them were very, very powerful. And again, we sensed the tears, but they were not tears of sadness or tears of pain or anything like that, but they were actually tears of joy. Both of them expressed a beautiful emotion, which really came through, at least to me, in those testimonies.
If I may add to your particular comment, because I want to corroborate that I've talked to several people about those testimonies, and they all agreed that first of all, we didn't understand Portuguese, and second of all, we did get the emotion. They were very emotional, and I was particularly excited because these two have not only been knowledge seekers for a long, long time, but they've also been knowledge teachers. They've actually stepped up, and so it's a very difficult thing to be a teacher in something that you haven't experienced. And so now I quite literally have to pass the baton to these two, because they not only are excellent teachers, but they've also experienced it. And this is one of the problems, as you understand, with being a teacher. Teachers teach because they can't do, right? That's what they say. Well, these teachers can do, and we all will be in the can do state. So this is the advancement and the elevation of everything, and just um, all the people that I've talked to have made the same comment. They see the emotion coming out, regardless of understanding the words. We understood the emotion, and that's the whole thing. The universal community always refers to the intent. They don't listen to the words. They listen to the emotion, they listen to the intent, and they respond accordingly. And so either they engage or they put a barrier.
Disengage.
Yeah, engage or disengage. There you go. There you go. So, yeah, and what another comment that I just want to make is that the testimony was extremely elaborate and detailed and meaningful. And for that, I thank them. I just want to draw one point. I was shocked to hear the length of the trip. I know coming from South America to Europe is a long trip, but 30 hours plus one way is just unreal. I can't imagine it, and I personally don't have the patience for it. So my hats off to them for being able to do that. But I am absolutely sure that the return trip didn't take 30 hours because they were probably recounting their trip over and over again and enjoying the benefits of those trips. So I'm going to stop talking and pass the baton to you.
Okay, I don't know if Claudia or Josepha, if you feel like saying anything, but I would encourage everyone to listen. And we're going to hear so many more testimonies, I know, coming out of here. Mr. Keshe is encouraging people to sign up for especially local people or people that have been through the system. And again, we can always sponsor someone if you can't go there, because there's many people apparently that would like to participate in this transmutation process. And he said you could buy a round trip ticket and you may get credit for the return flight. So that could be maybe sooner than we think. But yes, I agree, Alex. When I heard 38, 34 hours, I just couldn't believe it. I know Ed thought it was a lot of layover time, but it's still a lot of when you can go direct and instantaneous, let's say. Why would you take a flight?
Hello, Mark. Hello, everybody. Hello, Alex.
Claudia.
Thank you for your
Hi.
comment, Alex.
Hi, Claudia.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that's the voice that I said about on Friday, I made alone. And I connected to the machine to make the voice, the deployment, everything that I felt. And that's what you said. That's only emotion. I can speak everything because it's many flashes but I want to ask you, Alex, because we did this travel, but I don't know, I can see in me the change. I don't know the change that stay with me in my routine and in my daily life. So I want to say, what do you think about it? I don't know the other people that enjoy the travel too.
You
But
said you
in,
can see the change or you cannot see the change.
I cannot see the change in my routine.
So, Claudia, first of all, you're very young. And the thing is, as we get older, we pick up a lot of baggage. So I don't think that you have as much baggage as most people to drop off. But you know that the thing is that this is a new experience, and it is adding to your knowledge, and it takes some time to digest. Now, one of the ways that we digest our learning is, as I've spoken before, it has to do with our memory. And the memory actually gets physically imprinted into our brain. And we don't have to physically go there and pick it the way we could go into a garden, say, and pick a tomato. It's there on demand when we need it, and it's available not just to us in our consciousness, but us in our subconsciousness, the part that we grow, we breathe, our organs create, our immune systems create it, and everything else. And so that part of your system is automatic. What is most profound about this experience is that you remember it. And you need to compare that to the memory that you had before you were born, which I would submit in consciousness would be zero. But it can't be zero because you were born with the knowledge of the universe. So you don't remember it in your physicality because that's the point. The point of your physicality is to increase your memory and to be able to add that to your original memory. And you have been able to now do this. And when you come to that realization, well, I'll tell you what happened to me. I fell down. In fact, I fell out of bed. So, you know, when you're lying in bed, how do you fall out of bed? You know, I mean, that's how ridiculous it is. And I think that will happen to you. And at that moment in time, it will change you, because at that point in time you will realize what is important or what is not important, and so the priorities in your life will change. And I think all of us are going to go through this. Some of us are going to go into a shocking way. Yours is going to definitely be more graceful, because first of all, and I'm going to include Josepha in this, is because your intent is true. So it's a lot easier. It's a lot more graceful. Where it's going to be a problem is for those people who resist. It's like that little child, you know, in the corner. You say, mommy says, okay, we have to go. No, I don't want to. Well, those are the ones who are going to have the problem. So obviously, you put up with that exceedingly long trip, and that was the indication of your indomitable spirit, right? Because if you were to sit back and say, oh, you know, I'm going to go on this trip and it's going to be 30 plus hours, a lot of people are going to say, well, you know, you go ahead and I'll just stay behind. But you went, and because you had an eternal faith. Well, where did that faith come from? And so what you have is that you have been able to do something that all of the knowledge seekers here are looking forward to doing, is to be able to go into outer space. And you have done that. And what you have done is demonstrated the benevolence of the universe, because you could go there in safety with no accidents, and that you could come back in safety with no accidents. And now you are no longer that person that you were as a child in terms of knowledge. You have added to that knowledge. But I'll tell you what is going to be the big payoff, and it's going to be truly wonderful, is you will find a greater peace and contentment in your life, and then you will also find that your vitality will be so much greater.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much. I agree all that you said.
I'm giving you this from a point of because I haven't done it myself. It's from all the information that I've put together with respect to the explanations. You see, because something is always something, nothing is nothing, and in the absence of an explanation, we can, oh, it's nothing. No, it is something, but you don't have an explanation. Well, now you have put that explanation forward, and so you have that gift now. That is something that you have created. So you are a product of that which you have created, and now that gives you an added insight. And so now the challenge is, there are two challenges. One is how you navigate through the rest of your life, and how you navigate with the people you come in contact with. It's a huge challenge, let me tell you, because, and well, I know it's been hard for me to actually cope, and I've had to basically, force myself to cope, because you can only interchange with society. You don't want to be a hermit, say, oh, like some monk in the Himalayan mountains. You are in heaven. You're a heavenly creature in heaven, and now you need to tell the world.
Yes, is continue to do what you're doing and approach and what are you doing now. I think it's a privilege that we have, and I'm thankful for Mr. Keshe, and and continue this working that we are doing in Brazil, and increasing the knowledge for everybody. And that's it. That's it. Thank
That
you
is
so
it.
much, Alex.
That is it. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.
And I wonder what sort of conversations or interactions are going on between the soul of physicality and the soul. The soul wants to escape, to go out and confirm it. You have to through the death process and so on and so forth to confirm its existence. But now the soul must be quite delighted that the physicality or soul of physicality is sort of waking up in a way. And as Mr. Keshe said, this is the first time the two souls are going to be allowed, they're aware of each other, but they're going to be allowed to work together. So this must be a delightful time for the souls in a way. Would someone else like to bring up a question, a thought? I can play another clip. There are so many pieces of knowledge again in 5 hours. We heard Lisa's, which I'll play part of it, maybe the first 10 minutes at the end there, about the plasma gases and the elevation of the soul. But just like the cell phone, we don't have to understand it completely to be able to use it.
May I add one more thing?
Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Okay, Jalal, right after me, please. Here, the one of the big problems on this planet is the deception, and the deception comes in the form of a lie. And one of the big problems that I had was that I needed a lie detector to detect a lie. And then when I found out that I don't need a lie detector, that I myself could be a lie detector, I ran into another problem which I totally didn't expect, and that is that I had to, when someone was whom I was speaking with was telling me a lie, I had to pretend that I believed them, so as not to A, hurt their feelings, but B, so that I don't get into an argument with them. Because if you ever get into a discussion with someone who is lying to you and say, "Oh, yes, but there's a different point of view." No, 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 you're wrong. You're wrong. Then you come to a point of conflict and say, "Well, is that the point of conflict that I want?" So we get to pick and choose, what our point of conflicts is. So I was pretending to believe their lies. And now Claudia and Joseph are in a position where, on behalf of the rest of the Brazilian community, they already know the truth. And so nobody can actually come across and lie to them. And nobody can make a comment with respect to Austria because they've been there. No one can make a comment about the enhancement units because they've done that. No one can question their determination because they've done that. This is a huge, huge release of a burden. They don't have to pretend, and they don't have to take it. They don't have to say, "Oh, if anyone questions what they've done, excuse me, we've documented it because we've been there. We documented it because we were on the Friday broadcast in Brazil, and we documented it here on Sunday. This is the truth. These people are telling the truth, and as such, they can tell others. But what we do know is that people sometimes don't want to hear the truth. And so that is another truth. So what we have to do is discriminate. And we've been taught that discrimination is a bad word. Well, excuse me, discrimination is important because this is where we have plasma that can absorb fields or plasma that can be a barrier of fields. So something that is detrimental to us is something that we put up a barrier to. And conflict, warmongering is something that we don't need. The way we do this on this planet is we fight fire with fire. So you want to go to war? Let's go to war, and we'll see, who survives. And what do you survive? Maybe you survive a few more years, but the stupidity continues. The immorality continues. Claudia and Josepha have severed that connection to stupidity and to the lies, to the cheating and the deception. This is worth gold. Over to you, Jalal.
Yes, thank you, Alex. Hi, everyone. I have two things here. First, I didn't hear the question of Claudia. That's one. Second, I really like you all guys to listen to the answer of Mr. Cash to Salomia in the last workshop. It is, everything really you need to do is listen to the answer. He said, I do not fight. Solving a problem is exactly like you eat. For you to eat, you think you will receive, let's say, energy of 100, but in reality, to receive this energy of 100, you need to spend energy of 800. Why? It's only to confirm for the emotion side of the man, that it is exists. The same thing, solving a problem that you think you will get from it 100, but in reality you spend 800 of energy. This 800 or 700 or 500, you spend it wasting this all energy for just hearing the problem. You need it. You need it to elevate. Adding it this 500, which you know, wasted it here and there, to listen to the technology, to go in it more and more. And you all been chosen from your soul part. It is the emotion which is fighting to make a place of seeing things. Sometimes I tell the knowledge seekers, you know, I remember one word of Mr. Keshe said, I made the plasma in the water for you to see the gases, only to see the gases. It's not this what you want. If you see the gases, that means you see a matter state. If you see a matter state, that means you brought up the principle energy, you call it the plasma, the principle plasma, to be weakened enough more and more and more and more and more to be tangible, for you to see it. And then you take this, what you see, and it's make a miracles in all aspects of what we are using it for. So think, guys, if I bring a plasma of 1,000, to see it, it will be a plasma of 10. It is an order of magnitude, you know. You bring it to a plasma of 10, and then you use it to make all these beautiful things. So what about the real 1,000? What it will do? So anyway, this only to put it to think about it in all your works. And whatever you do with the plasma, you will have something. Not necessary, my dear friends, not necessary it will interact with you. Plasma interact similar or near similar. Maybe you are more above this plasma, what you think you need to interact with. Or maybe it is above your strength, but I don't think it's above your strength. I think you are more above it. And don't go to the big. Go to the drops. The drop, it's more important and more strong than the whole ganses, the whole packet of gans. One drop of it, it's more stronger. Because the stronger without the weaker do not work. So he needs the weaker to give. So he will give more. So the weaker, it will receive more. In the plasma, it's really different. Really go to the smaller, go to the Go to the weaker. Be humble. We used to be very strong, and we still very strong. But in what? In the level of the soul, or in the level of the matter state? So thank you. And if beautiful Claudia repeat the question. I only heard the answer, my dear. So if it
Hello,
is
Jalal.
hi Claudia.
I asked him what can change in my daily life, because I am not seeing after the travel into the new unit. So
It's very good. It's very good, yeah, that you didn't see it in your daily life.
no, I didn't see it.
No, really, really, it's very good. Because whatever is there, it is above the matter state. So what you need to do? Go above the matter state. And you do not go to, as Mr. Kat said, enough with the dreams. Enough. You go and you say, I'm gonna sleep and I will dream. No. You decide, I will go. That's finished. If it's daytime, nighttime, lying time, douching time, whatever time, and there is no time, So you decide, I want to go. That finished. I know someone. He he's eating and he go, and he do not know that he's doing it. Until recently we speak together, and I clear to him what he's doing, and he tried again and again to do it, but he didn't succeed because he want to see it from the matter state. We all do it. All the time we are doing it. So don't look to the matter state. Don't bring it down to the matter state. It already interact with you 100%, 100%, and it is very beautiful not to see it. Just if you done anything with the plasma, anything with the gases, and you trust there is fields and interaction, just trust these fields.
Okay, Jalal.
That's all what
Thank
need,
you.
really. That's all what you need. You know why we need confirmation? You know why we need? Because we are not crazy. We need to see things that the people do not call us crazy or I don't want to bring this word as idiots. No. We do not need a confirmation. We done it with the small things. And believe me, this small things, what you done with the ganses, it is the weakest point of the plasma. So imagine if there is no ganses, what is the strength of what you are doing? Like you bring a god and you want it to be a human. That cannot be. That cannot be. Okay, Claudia, now I understand. Maybe
Thank you,
next
Jalal.
time, maybe next time you will say, okay, I do not need to really.
No, Wednesday we talk more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. Mark.
Okay. As Jalal said, Mernez, I muted your mic, but you may have wanted to add a comment. Because we're so physical, we go, as Jalal said, for the bigger and stronger, where Mr. Keshe goes for the smaller and the weaker. which is closer to the creator and more humble and a giver. So Mernez, did you want to make a comment? Please open your mic unless it came open by mistake.
Hello. Sorry,
Hi.
it was just hello, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that was an inadvertent opening.
Mark, can I ask a question?
Everyone can, and I hope they do. Salamia, you'll be next. I know your name was just brought up by Jalal. Go ahead, Alex, and then we'll go to Salamia.
Well, the question is for Claudia here. You know, you've now been there. You wanted to go there for a reason, and certainly that reason has been fulfilled. But you know, when you look at the situation, the word that frequently comes up, as especially in the Brazilian community, is doubt. In the North American community, we just call that being from Missouri. But doubt, you've eliminated that doubt. And, you know, surely you've given some thought to that. I wanted to hear your comment on the position that you have now where you don't have that doubt. You actually have that confirmation. It's a non-specific confirmation in terms of outer space, but it's a very specific confirmation in terms of your Earth space, because you were where you are now physically. You went to the space center, you did things, and you came back. There's no doubt you did that. I believe you. Why shouldn't I believe you? You know, I have no grounds to have doubt that you went there. And I'm saying I have no grounds, but you actually have no physical grounds to have that doubt. That has to change your life in terms of your perspective with respect to your life, with respect to your family, and now with respect to the community. Would you be able to comment on that?
I think this doubt disappeared because it's not only an imagination anymore. I was there and I felt everything. So I'm not only seeing in the pictures and listening the things. For me, this doubt disappeared, and I think I'm stronger now to say about the foundation, and I think it's increasing now. I'm doing my experiences with the ganses and the waters. I think I'm stronger now in this matter. So the other things I don't know to say about it.
One thing, if you experience anything with the plasma, anything, don't tell no one.
Okay.
Absolutely no one. Only
inside the machine, you are saying?
Anywhere, anytime.
Okay.
You know what?
No.
Okay. If you approach to tell anyone, that means you want a support. And that what you really going in. And that support goes in the level of the emotion. not in the level of the soul. The soul do not need a confirmation. Guys, all of you, if you experience anything with the plasma, anything, you can tell it only and teach it only for a knowledge seeker, because he is also in the same level. But don't tell it to any outsider, whoever he is, because when you go there to tell him, see what is here, see what is that, see what is this, that mean you are in the level to confirm that you are right and that you do not need. Mr. Cash, I remember in the private teaching, he's telling and he's teaching. When you see a man after these teachings, you will understand what is the position of the soul. And this is only for you, not for you to tell him his position, to confirm that you are right or you are wrong. No way. You're bringing the level of the soul to the emotion side lower. That cannot be. If you experience something that when you are testing something and going experiments with the plasma to elevate, yes, that is different. But with you inside your plasma, your soul, please do not take it to this level of confirmation. You do not need a confirmation. The confirmation done only one time when you put the two plates and you made the ganses. But we still, until this moment of time, we are using the same method to confirm that there is a plasma. The plasma is above this ganses. The ganses is very, very weak. The same thing when we go to the others and we try to show them, we try to tell them all these beautiful things and I think it's not going in the elevation of our soul. It's going in the level of confirming that we are right in this technology. And this is up to you. How much you can spend energy in that. This energy you need it.
Mhm. I was invited, Jalal, to do a live with a journalist in Brazil that is he has many people in the channel, and he wants to do a live after I I went to the unit. So I don't. You think I don't?
No,
How can I say?
no. If you are
to
working,
say about it.
yeah, if you are working with the plasma ganses and all of it, yes, you can do it because this is experiment with the matter state plasma. Everyone, he can do it. But if you go with your energy level of the soul, no, you do not need a confirmation from anyone. You know, when we went with the hands, anyone in the whole world, he can do it and he can test it. It's very, very, very simple, and you can put the two hands together and see the tingling and the feels. He can feel it. But above this one, which is inside us, the interaction of the souls, the interaction of the soul of physicality with the soul of the man, the soul of the man with the emotion, this do not need to go out. unless you are in a class and you are teaching for the same level. Knowledge seekers. Yes, you can do that. But for outside, no, you do not need a confirmation in this level. You tell them there is a thing you can do. You go first with this small things, ganses, and see what is the beauty of this fields interaction. But you know what? This is one of a trillion which you have, and 100% you experiment so many things. You already, done it before, but you do not know that is in this category. Like, the dreams, you will, and then when he open up and he will, everyone he dream, everyone he travel all the time, everyone feel, everyone when he think about someone he will ring him, or he accidentally he will see him, but there is no accident. Then you will open up for him and you tell him, you know what? Don't go anymore. That is a dream. And this is the beauty what Mr. Cass in the latest workshop he said, finish with the dreams. There is no more dreams. You say, I go. You decide. So many times, I told the UC member and UC supporters, guys, you done it once. You do not need to do it twice. Twice, that means you bring it down. You know what I'm speaking about? About the 5 minute silent. You do not need a 5 minute of silent. You do not need one part of million of silent. You do not need it. You go there. You do not go. You do not need to go to sleep. To go to the dream. To go to trouble. It's too much time. You do not need it. Now you need to practice. I go. Okay, I didn't go in one day. Okay, no problem. It is a learning process. I will go. Okay, I need 1 week. I will go. I need 1 day. I will go. I need 10 hours. I will go. I need 1 hour. I will go. I will need 1 minute. I will go. I need 1 second. I'm there. I do not need a second. It is a learning process. How we learn? What we decide, my dears. This is the beauty. What you decide. Now you have the chance to decide because you gain it. You gain the trust of the soul to give you the steering. It's only a trust. That's all. How you trust your child to give him a key of a car? Unless he showed you that he is well trusted to not harm anyone. Then you will give him because you know now he can drive. Okay. That's all what's happening. So thank you very much. I need to stop here.
A direct answer to your question, Claudia, also is that a gateway has opened up for you, and you will see a completely different posture because you're not the same person you were before the trip, and so now you want to go on this show not for your benefit. Okay, you didn't go to Austria. Well, from my point of view, you did not go to, Austria Idol or American Idol. I don't know if there's a Brazil Idol, but you know what I'm talking about, where people want to go somewhere to be famous.
No, I'm not. I
Yeah.
don't.
So you're not going on this show to be famous. You're going there with the express purpose of connecting with other souls. And so what you've done now is you've opened up a gateway. And why removal of doubt is so important is because you also expose yourself to attack. And when you get attacked, then you really have to be disciplined to not attack back. But you do need to stand your ground. And that is the difference between absorbing and being a barrier. And so you give what your intention is. And so if you go to that, you will succeed in that. You have a huge advantage. Why is it that the Canadian community has maybe 100 people in the Telegram, and the American community has, 200 people, plus this week a gang of prostitutes coming onto the Telegram, and Brazil has over 300,000 people following. So there is a inherent spirit in Brazil that is absent in North America, and so you can capitalize on that. You have a much shall we say, wider gateway to go through, and you can bring more. And no one can claim that you are bringing falsehood to you because you have done it. They are confirming and agreeing with you, so you don't have to even bridge that. You are going, but not as a celebrity, as a teacher. And so you are now at that threshold where Jalal and I were, because I'm not here on Sundays, to be famous. This is not the purpose. And I don't know who comes, and I don't care who comes, and I don't care who agrees with me. What I care about is what I'm bringing, because I have control over that. And so there is always a purpose on that. But how do I know what that purpose is? And especially, how do I know about something that I haven't physically experienced, where you and Joseph have? So you have that advantage. But that doesn't mean that, that I might be in a worse position as a teacher, or Jalal be in a worse position as a teacher. I don't know if he's gone, but you are in a better position. So you can capitalize on that and use that to your advantage, and remain true to the emotion that you had and the intention that you had to go to Austria, which I believe was of a legitimate intention, and that was to learn. That was to interact with the universal community. And so if you go on this, you have to understand that not only the people who are tuned in to that program will hear you, but the universal community will also hear you. And you need to go in there with that intention. So the words will transcend the physical universe. I hope you have a great trip.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Claudia?
Was legitimate. Yes.
Claudia, if you use that smile is in that picture and you beam the radiance that you're doing in that picture,
Oh,
you'll do
yes.
fine.
Thank
Are
you.
you,
Thank
you
you.
reading my mind, my dear? Oh my
Thank
God.
you.
Oh my God. Whatever.
But I want to say something. I don't know how to, with other, that Jalal was said was very important for me, because these persons is not a knowledge seeker. So I don't know how to say and about these emotions and transcend. I am a little bit anxious and about it. I want to speak. Yeah, I want
You just share what you
Yeah.
experience. Doesn't matter what anyone thinks. Who
Okay.
cares?
Okay. Okay.
And if Mr. Keshe didn't want these things shared, he certainly wouldn't have recorded or partially recorded testimonials for others to be able to open up a new dimension in their understanding that there's more than they see, smell, touch, and hear. So you're sharing your experience with the world. And through the souls, it will open them up. It will plant a seed. It will water a seed. It will elevate them in so many ways. The souls will be very glad to hear it, even though the physicality may cast any doubts or shadows on it, because we are so physical. But the souls will be very much elevated to hear your experience.
If you approach anything, don't go to give. Go for them to take. It's a huge difference. And how they will take. This is the soul level. Mr. Katz, so many times in his teaching, he said, your soul is before you. You just think about something, your soul is already there. What is followed? Which one is stronger? Who is reaching that point? Then the physicality will arrive. That means the matter state, whatever you are doing. But first, your soul will be there. But do we need a confirmation that we done well? I don't really now, I don't think so. After, especially for me, after all of these years of a lot of times in the beginning, we are trying to have the, the pleasure of hearing that they understand or they knows or thank you or something like this, also there's a confirmation, some sort of confirmation. It's acceptable, but after that, really, you do not need, because you will stagnate in that level. You will not, you will not give unless you know that you will receive. No way. This is the point where we lose. We lose the point we reached in the beginning. Like Mr. Kai said, don't do the same circle 2 times. If you felt something, don't go again to the same position of felting this thing. No, go above it. Always go above it. Only in this way you elevate in this level of the fields. If you go second time to the same level, finished. You already lost. It's not easy for us to do that. Why it's not easy? Because we need the confirmation. Just drop the confirmation. You do not need the confirmation. You with yourself, you know. You do not need the confirm from anyone else that you are good. It's you and your soul. You thank your soul and thank the souls who is you do not see. Wherever you are sitting, wherever you are going, there is a soul which you do not see. They also interact with your soul, with your fields, with your aura. They also take and give. If you don't confirm in that way, nothing, you will not achieve anything. You need to confirm that one with yourself. That's really the only confirmation you need. With yourself, you confirm, I interacted with this flower. Yes, I interacted with this child. Yes, I interacted with that man without him knowing. And you do not need him to know. Because if he knows, that means that is emotion side approach. Okay, the emotion, it can approach sometimes, but not always. Little bit here, there, you are working with it until you finish it with this confirmation of physicality. But from the beginning, you already you have targeted what you want to achieve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. We are together to change this planet
We do not need to change the planet.
for a peaceful place.
No. You do not need that. Everything is beautiful.
Yeah, but inside of me, not
Yes,
outside of me.
exactly. It is the way we approach.
Mhm.
It is the way we approach everything. Mr. Kant said, this is the most beautiful time ever happened to Earth. With all this, what you see, before was worse than that, 100 times, million times worse. Now, and we are in very beautiful in respect to what was before. So why don't we see that? Because we are living in it. Okay, I want to go out of this box. Now I am interacting with my soul. I know there is a soul. I know it's interacting. So why don't I trust that interaction and increase it and give it more energy? Okay, I take the energy of what I spent in the physical side. I take the energy which I spent in the emotion side and add it to the soul level. It's the same thing when you approach a problem. It's the same thing when you approach eating. No different, but in another names. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Alex, Mark, everyone.
I think Salamia was going to come up next. Thank you, Jalal.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, Jalal, for naming me today. You wake up me. I would like to remember to all of us that the aim of our technology and of our science is a peace. Everything what we do is for peace. To get peace at the soul level and of course at the planet level. I start to write poetry for peace, hoping that my fields in this way by my emotions and the product of my soul will influence the actual situation in Europe and in the world. And kindly I asking you to do the same, and do not forget that this is our aim on this planet, to bring peace to humanity in order to reach another level of civilization. Without getting peace, it's not possible. As an
Right.
experience, yes.
That's why he's given us the directive of spraying the Gans waters. We just don't spray it once and it's over. We continue until we reach a permanent, peaceful condition on this planet. And then, of course, taking it to the field level with our souls, which we can do not just one time, but he said all the time.
Yes. Poetry is, for me, is a product of my soul. And I am giving, using words which has a material vibration and can change the fields. Today I just posted my poem dedicated to the peace and to the light, to maybe the future Secretary General of NATO, now he is a president of Romania, and maybe in the future he will be chosen, I don't know. But I put this as commentaries. Everything was about peace, 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 and I made some commentaries. Also trying to influence not only at the soul level, but also by words, by written words, to influence in the right direction of cooperation at the international level, to make an international architecture on security. We need to put together Russia, China, and America and European Union, to work together as a family. Confrontation is a cancer of the society and of this blue planet. As Mr. Keshe said, and all we know, confrontation, fighting, because Jalal just said that Mr. Keshe remind us that he never make conflicts and never fight, to fight against something. For example, my question was about HARP project of controlling climate and environment. And I think that at the soul level, we can influence the climate in a good direction when we need rain, to get enough rain for our plants and our vegetation, and even for animals to get water to drink, and to have electricity from hydro centrals and so on. I'd like to share something with you that first, when I meet Mr. Keshe, I felt in trance, like sleeping. And I went out from my house at the soul level, and I went to a church. I have nearby a church. I went at the soul level. I have seen there a light in the top of the church, and this light went, and I also, my soul went with this light. So this was my first interaction with the soul of Mr. Keshe, and he helped me to fly instantly. At once. I never said to him and to you, but now I feel it to share with you. And I thank you very much to Mr. Keshe, because with his presence, and also when Alex is teaching, sometimes I fell in a trance and I fly, because I interact at the soul level. Flying is just amazing, because you come back with a lot of energy, and in equilibrium. You go at the soul level. Maybe we go in the in the principal star, I mean black hole, and we get this energy from this primordial energy type. This is my feeling. I have a question for all of you. Can you explain to me what is a link between the flower of life and the plasma. I know that 60 lesson, Mr. Keshe in 60 lesson or 69, he's speaking about the flower of life. I didn't have time to study this, but maybe somebody can help me to illuminate and clarify me. Thank you very much.
Well, you know, I thought about one of the things you said about fractals and that you're a fractal or we're fractals. But if we keep reproducing ourselves in the same manner as been in the past, we're going to create the same conditions and problems that we create. So I think by the elevation of the soul, I was thinking, then we start to create a new form and shape and fields in this way. So we don't want to keep reproducing what we've been producing, which is wars and killing and eating each other. So we want to take it to a higher level of understanding, and this is the elevation of the souls. Mr. Keshe could have given this technology, but he said within 100 years, within 1 century or 2 or so many generations, you'd be right back in the same position. So the whole thing is to elevate the soul of the planet, the soul of the vertical, the soul of the universal community as well. And that was my thought when you kept saying that you're a fractal and everything is a fractal. You know, that was just my thought on that. So we need to go to a higher level of elevation for the real thing to change, which is the soul of the man.
Yes, but fractal, not in a material, fractal is the ideal. A flower of life is like a circle of Leonardo da Vinci. You know, this Masonic Vitruvian man and golden proportion and so on. It's a circle in a square. The square is a material life and the circle is a plasma reality, non-visible, I mean, ideal, perfect. So flower of life is like a cube. When we go from outside of the cube, we create this flower of life. And this flower of life is like a plasma. And of course, has all potentialities are there. And we have inside all potentiality because we are all flowers of life. I mean, flower of life is like a soul, is like an eye of a soul. Every soul has an eye, and this eye is the eye of the God, I mean. This flower of life can be the product of the speed of light, and is the light in movement, is a light in a spiral movement, in a vortex.
Okay.
So it's energy. This flower of light is all, it's energy. And as you said, we have to hire to make a quantum leap of our energy to another level.
That's what the systems are all about. That's what
Yes.
LINS is all about.
Yes.
We need a helping hand and we need training. Not everyone, but I think most of us will. I appreciate you expressing yourself.
Yes, thank you. And I think that this unit needs us because we can influence with our energy of our soul, this elevation of the soul of humanity. And I'd like to go there physically, but I do not have money and also time. I spend time with my dogs and I can leave them alone.
You'll get it through the gas. I'm pretty sure. That's the whole
Yeah.
planet. As he said, we can't go into the deep forest in the Amazon and bring the GANs to the colony of ants, but by the gas seeping, connecting, moving in this plasmatic way, this will bring the elevation. So this is how it's going to happen. The systems are set and to link up and to deliver this elevation. And this, I think, is what he meant by we're going to upgrade the entire planet in one go. This is how it's going to be reached. We're not going to teach each individual person, but through these plasmatic gases, we'll create this elevation of the soul, which will create the interest in the accepting of the systems for more and more of them to be
And
deployed.
yes, Mark. And I think that I was able to connect with the unit at distance on 6th June. And a butterfly of this lady who had this vision, do you remember, with a butterfly?
Yes, you said you
This
saw one.
butterfly just came to my house. I don't know if it was the same. And I feel it that it was my connection with this unit. And I never have, I'm not hungry. I do not need to eat. I eat just for pleasure, some fruits and salads, but
And that was
uh,
one of the things Mr. Keshe mentioned to us all
yes,
about
yes,
what he's seeing with people reporting. I know Gallup had reported it, Stefania had reported it. I sensed it days later going through the mobile experience. But that was one of the connections. I know Mr. Keshe said that someone came back 2 days later and they said they hadn't eaten. So this is one of the things that's being shared about what happens after you leave the system.
yes. I have this feeling before. And I said maybe because I'm doing daily Reiki, I mean using the energy of the universe to feed my body. And unity is the same. It's like using the energy of the universe. And thank you all, because I have a vision with my dog. Do you remember that my dog passed away? And I had a vision with him in a plasma ball of light, and he's happy now. He's in flying on this ball of light. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Universal Council and all of you help him to
Yes,
elevate.
your soul is interacting with the soul of the dog.
Yes.
That's what's actually happened. It's not a vision. It's not a dream. We don't call it
Yeah.
a dream anymore.
Yes. It's it was the reality, other reality, plasma reality. I mean, thank you. Much love to you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Solomia. Okay, anyone else would like to bring something up? A question for Alex? Selena.
Yes. I didn't I just joined few minutes ago, or 15 minutes ago maybe. I don't know what kinds of conversation is happening there about the Claudia, but I'm gonna talk about the peace. People saying about the peace, world peace, this and that. I'm gonna tell my experience. I think so. Before 2 times, I told about my dream. I'm gonna repeat that one again. Because the peace, original peace. What is peace? I understood that day. I was sometimes it happened all night we sleep, but we feel no sleep. We didn't sleep. The dream, uh, wake, those kinds of sleep, right? So one day it's happened to me, and then when I woke up in the morning, sat down in the bed, and my eyes first saw my feet, went to my feet, and then where I sat in the bed and I felt most beautiful feet in the world. And first time I have feet in 1,000 years, maybe first time all my whole not life, thousand life, afterlife. So whatever it is, so I'm sitting in the bed and feeling that much peaceful. I don't have any word to say about explain the peace, but it feel like you saw in the American freeway highway there is a semi truck, big take stuff one step to another step. If those kinds of truck hit me, still I will sit there and say I am here and I'm beautiful. That kinds of peace. There is no word I can explain. And I felt that.
The
And
emotion of
yes,
completeness. Could it
yes,
be the emotion of completeness, which Mr. Keshe said people would experience upon leaving the system or in the system?
yeah. But without the system, it happened like 2-3 years ago, or maybe more than that. But I can't move. I was so peaceful. I can't move. Half an hour I stayed one position and seeing my feet. After then my whole body I'm seeing 2 hours. 2 hours I was in like a total still position, like a stone or something. And it is so peaceful. If somebody say, I will bring that peace to you again, I will give whatever I have for that peace. It is unexplainable. So we are talking about world peace, this peace, that peace. No, the peace is in with us, in our soul. That is the peace. And when we brought that peace in our soul, everything will be perfect. Everything is perfect, always perfect. It was perfect, it will be perfect. And we need to know that. And yes, so I have a lot of experience, a lot of stuff happened to my life when I was little, that time to this time. There is lots of thing happened. And that's why that day, Rick class, Mr. Kash came. And then when he said, though those are not dream, sometimes I see in dream all my life, little too. No, there is a strange dream in always. And I have vision 5 to 6 years ago. It started, I can see a lot of stuff without dream. And then whatever it is, a lot of experience. But that day was the is totally different stuff, totally different thing. Just I can think about me. I am present. I'm there. I'm here. Just that is, and that is peaceful.
How about the
So
balanced fields of the soul of the existence?
yes, that was that. Yeah.
He mentions that when he shows the ice cube in one of the bumpers that we play.
Yeah.
You
So I want
sounds like you were in complete balance where you didn't need the physicality, you didn't need the money, you didn't need the food. You were
nothing.
just in the balance of the fields of the soul of the existence.
Yeah. And we need to work for that with our soul, nothing else. Everything is perfect. Everywhere, everything is perfect. That's it. Thank you.
Everyone has a microphone. Would you like to add something? share something, ask a question to Alex. We can go to a couple of clips from Mr. Keshe.
Hi, Mark.
Gail.
Gail. Yeah, I just had a quick question for Alex. He was very moved by the experience with Claudia and Josepha. And I just wanted to ask, if I'm not being too personal, but do you, when you're teaching, does it come from your soul? Or do you just listen and then prepare your lessons and then it comes from the soul? I'm just curious because it's definitely something very, very profound. So if you don't mind answering, thanks.
It would be my pleasure. It's a difficult challenge for me, and I try to. I mentioned that earlier on that I was going into uncharted territory, and I really meant that. It was uncharted territory, and when you look back and see the exploits of Christopher Columbus, he wasn't going into uncharted territory. He knew where he was going, and yet he didn't discover America, because there were people there already. He discovered for his own personal use, and the discovery that he made was that he discovered something that was different from what he intended to discover, which is why it became India. He was looking for India, and he didn't know that there was a North America in between. But anyway, the point is that we're going into uncharted territories insofar as our physicality is concerned. So the difference in this comparison here is that Christopher Columbus made a physical trip to a physical land where he encountered physical people who were there before him. And we are going into a plasmatic land. And we have all been there. And so how do we chart this course? And then compare that to the travels that everyone has had in Austria since June the 6th. And what is astounding to me is that everybody went safely and everybody came back safely. And any thought of danger seemed to have never crossed anyone's mind. And, people go on amusement rides the same way at the amusement park, right? But a lot of people do get hurt on amusement rides at the park, and that's the physicality. So what is the difference here when we go into the plasma reality? And so the plasma reality has to do, first of all, the soul knows. The second of all, the soul will never lie to you. Third, the soul is your best friend. And the fourth is that the universe is a benevolent place. And it's such a good question that you asked here, because I have to ask myself that same question, because I'm definitely going into uncharted territories, and I don't have the advantage right now that Claudia and Joseph have, insofar as that they have physically experienced the process of going to discover America. And they have discovered America, and they found that there were Austrians there. And Mr. Keshe was there, and a lot of other people were there. And they're not making any claims of any discovery in that regard. But what they are discovering is the plasma reality. And they now have that incorporated into them. So I have this already firm belief in the plasma reality. And the only confirmation that I can get is that I'm continuing to do these classes, and I have gone beyond that point where I had this trepidation of going into uncharted territory. So I have to be specific in terms of answering your question as to what is this uncharted territory. So what you have to understand is that the plasma science is not a new science. It's new to us. So if anyone's ever said, oh, I've got a new car, and then you go and you look at it, so it's a 20-year-old beater, and you say that's not a new car, that's a 20-year-old car. Well, it's new to me, and that's what the plasma science, it's new to us. But what is different? And the difference is that there are two communities, scientific community and the spiritual scientific community, and there's a reality, and there has been no coming together of that. And so when we look at our reality, what we think is our reality, we find that our reality is that little tiny red dot in the bottom of the right-hand corner of the universe. And the vast expanse of the universe is also part of our reality, and we're not experiencing that. And the reason for that has to do with the limitations of science. And so if I embrace, if I embrace those limitations, so then I become part of those limitations. And I did. And the shocking part for me was that when I discovered that we had a way to deal with cancer, where I struggled for 8 years, and then in a matter of 8 weeks, the cancer was gone. Now I had the same problem that Claudia and Joseph have. I know the truth, but I thought, well, this is great, and everybody was telling me that they wanted to know the truth, so I wanted to tell people the truth, and then I found out, well, they didn't want the truth. So the truth was that they didn't want to hear the truth; they just wanted to hear the lies. And I thought that's strange, because it had a significant impact on my life. And so in the process of learning about everything, what I did learn was I learned about the physical science in a way that I didn't understand, and in a way that was not explained in school. And so what I had intended on doing in terms of my teaching, and I was very lucky to be invited to teach at the Keshe Foundation, it became quite clear to me that, first of all, I don't have Mr. Keshe's knowledge. And second of all, my knowledge was limited to the physicality. And the reason for that is very simple. This knowledge is classified. And so fortunately for me, I don't have access to that. And I have no complaints about that either. And as a result, also, I have done no research in that regard either. So, but I am a member of this planet, and I am human. And so I have questions, and more questions than answers. And so how do you answer those questions when the people who are assigned to answer those questions let you down? And so I had ultimate faith in the establishment, shall we say, the educational community, the medical community, the social community. I had, ultimate faith in that, and they let me down. And especially when I really, really needed them, they really let me down. And so something brought me back up. And I had to understand that. And the only way that I could learn about that was in the physical reality. So how do I learn about the plasma reality? So I had to learn from Mr. Keshe. That was the other reality. But again, I don't have access. So how do I go into, for me, is uncharted territory? And that was over a year ago. And I've been able to carry on. And I got through a very serious breakthrough, and that had to do with outer space. Because where I was very, very concerned with my next class, I am now actually have created a series of classes that extend actually into next year. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that if you want to be taught by Mr. Keshe, then learn from Mr. Keshe. And if you want to be taught by me, then learn from me. And if you want to be taught by Jalal, then learn from Jalal. Why would Jalal want to teach like Mr. Keshe when you've got the real deal? It doesn't make any sense. So the thing is, can different people talk about the same subject? Well, of course we can, because we are all equal. And this is the message that Mr. Keshe has always been making. He's not coming to you as some kind of guru and saying, well, I have this special knowledge, and so I'm going to lord over you. And what a lot of people are doing is suggesting that there is some kind of mental override. You cannot force anybody to do anything because the soul will not allow it. Their soul will not allow it. So what is stopping that soul from understanding what the universal community is doing? And when you investigate that, you have to investigate your own soul and say, well, you know, how are you performing in the presence of the universal community? And why do you do certain things? As I've often said, why is not the question, why is the answer? And so you do what you do because of what you know. So if you change what you know, and if you change what you understand, then will you change doing what you do? And the answer, of course, is yes. But how do you incorporate that into your life? Well, when you look at how you were born, and if you ask that question, have you ever gotten an answer? I mean, other than you were a glint in daddy's eye? Is that an answer? Is that a suitable answer? Or how about the other answer? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Oh, well, you know, you just have to believe. Well, you do have to believe, but there has to be a substance to your belief. Because a lot of people believe in things that have no substance. And so we find that substance on its own is something that we construe as a physicality. Well, the plasma reality is a substructure, substance of the physical reality. And you are defined by your neighbors because you have to have these boundaries. And so then you realize that you're a product of something else. So you are not the product, you are something else. And what is that? And as soon as you ask that question and you start to pursue that, you find there's more. And how much more? And where do you look? And then you realize, well, if you keep looking in the same place, you're going to keep getting the same answer. And so when you're coming to the end of the T intersection and you have to make a decision, do you go left or do you go right? You have to make that decision. And if you go to the right and you find that it's the wrong decision, where's the right decision? It's going to be the other way. You have to turn around. And that's what I've done. And I look at science, and what they've done is they refuse to turn around. To this day, they continue to refuse to turn around. And even a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Keshe offered the energy units to the European community, and they, in no uncertain terms, told them that they're not interested in that. So why? Well, again, why is not the question? Why is the answer? there's a conflict. And it's not our conflict, it's their conflict. But where's the problem? The problem is that they're overstepping their bounds. And their bounds is actually interfering with our life space. And our life space is beyond that little tiny red dot on the universe. Our life space is the entire universe. Because otherwise, coming to Earth is pointless. It's a point to visit, but it's pointless to even come here. But we could have gone to Mars. Well, why didn't we go to Mars? We came to Earth. We came to Earth for a reason. And what is that reason? Is that reason you go to school, you get a job, you buy a house, and then you die? What is that? Is that the reason? He who has the most toys wins. So those are not the reasons. So there have to be other reasons. And you use those as your, as the light that you follow, the beacon, if you will. And you follow that, and you see where that takes you. And you find that there's no conflict there. In fact, what it does is brings clarity. And if you don't understand, then you have to delve deeper. How can you delve deeper if you don't have basics? And so that's what I'm doing. I'm covering the basics. And now I see for the first time that we've never been in outer space. Not with a rocket. We have all been in outer space, but there are some deficiencies. I didn't know about these deficiencies. I'm sure most of us didn't know about these deficiencies. We knew there were deficiencies, but we didn't know the source of them. Now an explanation has been put forward, and let's call it a theory. And so what it becomes important for us to understand a theory is a theory until it's proven wrong. And then it's not a theory anymore. It's nothing. It's something to be forgotten. It's like Roswell, oh, it was a weather balloon. No, it wasn't a weather balloon. Don't bring up that subject anymore. Enough. Okay? It wasn't a weather balloon. So don't repeat that history. And that's something that we always do. We look back in our history, and then we find that we've been lied to all along. And as we start to accumulate these lies, all we have to do is turn around 180 degrees and bam, there's the truth right in your face. And so for me, what was a preoccupation for 8 years of my life was eliminated within 8 weeks. And I knew the truth. And then I wanted to tell people, and they didn't want to know. And to this day, they still don't want to know. People still, to this day, don't know the difference between the physical reality and the plasma reality. And we're at the point where we're looking for a physical cure for cancer. And, we're at a point where we're saying, well, 95% of the causes of cancer, and I'm just picking a number, are psychosomatic. And, well, wait a second, psychosomatic is not a physical. So what that means is the physical response to the psychosomatic condition. And is that psychosomatic condition an island in the earth space? Well, no, it's not. So there's a relationship to something else. What is that something else? So that something else is our environment. So we are part of that environment. Our environment is our own man space. And part of that environment is the earth space. But both of those things are the product of something else. So that's not where we need to focus, because that is the focal point. So, when you look at things, you look with your eyes. But if you understand that your eyes move digitally, but your understanding is analogous. And what does that mean? That means the eyes focus on a spot, but there's a space in between. So our eyes move spot to spot to spot to spot. Who fills in the blank? Who fills in the space? That's a blur. And who fills that blur? We fill that blur. That blur is not physical. The focal point is what's visible. What's physical. What's visible is physical. What's non-visible, non-tangible is plasmatic. So we use a plasmatic function to complete the physical function. Why do we need to complete the physical function? Simple. The physical function is the lowest common denominator in terms of energy field. So there are higher energy fields. And how do you know that? Well, you know what? Punch yourself in the head and see if you like that. And if you don't like that, you know that you will never do that again. And so that's a physical response to your own emotion. So your emotion dictates the terms. And if your emotion dictates the terms, then the question is, what dictates the emotion? And so one thing follows another thing, follows another thing, follows another thing. So that's the yellow brick road that we have to follow. And you have to have this faith. And the problem that we have with this is because one of the limiting factors beyond what we talked about, the scientific community, is our own fear factor. And so I'll ask you the same question that I asked my mother, because she was fearful. And I said, when will you stop being fearful? Should you have stopped being fearful when you were a baby and you became a child? Or when you were a child and you became a teenager? You know how rowdy teenagers are today. So, are they fearful? They think they're brave, but, they all want to be American Idols. Do you stop being fearful when you're an adult? Or do you stop being fearful when you join the army? Or how about, do you stop being fearful when you grow old? Or how about the day before you die? Or how about the day after you die? That would be a good time to stop being fearful, wouldn't it? And at that point in time, exactly at that point in time, my mother stopped being fearful. Because there was no predicted time for her to stop being fearful. And we are at that time. Because if you take away the plasma science from our life today, everything around us is based on fear-mongering and warmongering and poverty. We now have no reason to be fearful, and we have the knowledge to join the universal community. And joining the universal community is where the truth lies. And it's not for us to put the blame on them and say, well, why don't you come and help us? The universal community is not interested in dealing with hooligans. It's our business to straighten out our act. So that means it's my responsibility. It's your responsibility. You can't pass your responsibility on to me. So my responsibility is to me. And my responsibility to me says I had an opportunity to share with you, and that's what I'm doing. And when I ran into the problem of uncharted territory, then I had to figure out where I was going. And all I had to do was look at where I was and where I wanted to go. And that path in between, that blur got filled. That's how I did it. I hope I answered your question. It was a terrific question.
All right. Can we hear from someone that we don't usually hear from, perhaps? Thank you, Gail, for the question, and thank you, Alex, for the detailed answer. And again, so much knowledge to absorb in the last workshop, in every workshop. It's just, we don't know where to turn. Mr. Keshe came in again to the reactor group and spoke for quite a long time, hours. Again, there's so much knowledge in all of his words that we haven't really comprehended it totally yet. But I think as we get closer and elevation of the soul, and that's what Freed said, one of the last questions was about becoming everything, or, and he says, yes, this is when you reach the level of the soul of the creator. I don't remember his exact words, but this is when you get all the knowledge. And there's quite a bit of knowledge to get to. But right now, the key, I think, is the deployment of the systems, getting yourself to lints, and so on and so forth. I really feel that's what Nikolai was asking Mr. Keshe. What did he feel the most excited about? And he said the flight systems, the gas systems, and the energy systems. So this is what he's most excited about today. We'll probably hear more about whoever has taken a few dollars or more from the Keshe Foundation to produce something. I know he said we'd hear more by the end of Thursday, but perhaps that group had gotten another extension, or there's some other negotiations going on in the background. And that was probably involved in the production of these systems, I would believe. But again, I don't know at all what has actually happened there. I don't know if anyone else has heard anything on that account. He may have to do a fraud blueprint, he said. Hopefully not. That we don't need another delay or wrench in the gumming up the works, let's say. Anyone else want to bring something else? I know we're all developing at different levels and different strengths we're all growing into the knowledge together in a way. And whatever you may say or think, we're not going to be critical of it. At least I won't allow the others to jump on you for what you have to share. If this is what you feel, if this is how you're understanding it, that's exactly fine. At your point and position, just like a star, are you going to say not to shine at that strength or not to be in that position? And as Rick said, we may see the economies of scale kick in. I know certain people don't have certain funds they need, and others can help to donate for people to arrive at LINS so that they can complete this transmutation process. And there's so many beautiful clips in the 4.4.5. It's just unbelievable, and trying to keep up with the full understanding, but we'll be there at some point in time, and hopefully not in the too distant future. But again, he said it's a process, thousands of years to get to the point. He said we thought it would take less time to get here, but this is where we are today. And one of the major questions was, how is humanity going to accept this technology? So what shall we do? Alex, shall we
think we've had a great class. I'm going to just take the opportunity to thank everybody for allowing me to present. We've all had quite the ride in the last, well, actually since Thursday, a very emotional ride, because we're at that point. Someone said today it's the greatest time to be alive, and it's true. And so our journey continues, and I'm going to pass it over to you, and hope that all of our souls coming together can manifest into that peaceful universe that we are all striving for.
Good. I think we'll go back to the workshop and take the last or the beginning. Lisa has created another beautiful video about these gas units and the elevation of the soul. So we'll spend the last 10 minutes, let's say, or the first 10 minutes of her. I think it's about a 20-minute video, but we'll just take the 10 minutes of it. And this is how the whole planet, including its inhabitants, including people from the universal community, citizens, creatures, what have you, are going to experience this elevation. It's not going to come through the blackboard and the emails and the telegrams, as he said, at a certain point. It's going to come through the elevation of the soul. That this understanding will become deeper and, again, more of a realization to all of us. So let's play the first 10 minutes, and then we will go to the final disclaimer, and we'll end the meeting here. Unless, of course, we see anyone else come in, or another opportunity for someone to share something they have been, or it's at the tip of their tongue. They felt they should have perhaps mentioned it earlier. They wanted others to comment on it, or just hear where they're speaking from. Okay, let me properly share the screen first. Okay, I'm going to highlight that. The other ones are checked. So let's hear about more of these units. This is what Mr. Keshe is most excited about at this. Of course, he may be excited as well that the foundation has had some fraud potentially perpetrated. Hopefully, as he said, they will rectify the misunderstanding or the errors before the foundation has to go and expose the entire matter. And we're all waiting for this as well. So let's listen to Lisa's first half of Lisa's video from Australia about the gas energy systems. Hopefully, we're seeing the screen, Alex, yes? Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. Okay, I need to see why the volume is not kicking in. It's up. Okay, we had it closed here. Let's try this.
The CO2 gas unit, which now is as part of the gas unit of Keshe Foundation, for sale. You dictate, I want methane unit or I want a CO2 unit. You as a human race created enough CO2 and you created mayhem for yourself. We as Keshe Foundation, CO2, doing the same. We elevate the soul of the planet. And the CO2 released brings the elusive, what we call elevation of the man, and the soul of the man, the animal, the cat, the dog, and the rest. If your CO2 could create such a global warming as you are working on, can you imagine you running the CO2 plasma systems as a gas? Conversion of one into the other. Transforming the CO2 absorbing in the systems and returning it back as a food for humanity. What this planet could not give, I have given a system today. Now you understand what is on the table, what in the past 2 weeks has been brought in. You use the fuel to burn, and at the moment when you have the methane gas, then you burn it, you get a CO2 and you get water. The same with the Keshe. But the CO2 you use for burning methane will elevate the soul of the planet. The water you produce will bring the nourishment to the seas and the oceans and the plasmatic condition to bring peaceful condition. We are selling you the CH4 methane gas units. You're happy that you've got a cheap gas. I'm happy that I start changing the man, the animal, the trees and the seas and the oceans back to life. What the planet needs to add, we add as an energy into it. Your man CO2 brought mayhem to you and what you call the global warming. The Keshe Foundation plasma CO2 brings it life. The expansion of the soul. It's not going to end. It's not going to cost you anything. When you're not using the gases, you let it flow in the air. When you need it, use part of it and again add to it. The condition and the motto of the Keshe Foundation has been on the website. We are here to serve and not to be served. Don't look, I'm going to close the gas because I'm not using it. Leave the gas open and let elevate the soul of the planet. The change, bring the change when the animal doesn't kill. When to the waters, when you're burning, it gets fed into the pipelines and into the rivers and the oceans. Burn as much as you like. There is no end to the energy of the universe. Now you understand what has been put on the table. What the past 2 weeks blueprint, as you looked at it, was to your own benefit. If I get a cheaper energy, if I get something else, now you understand. Is you serving humanity, serving the planet to bring the change and the mayhem which our previous generation ourselves has brought on this planet. Gas pipes from Russia, what does it bring us? More mayhem. Where do we go from here? How do we add to this knowledge? Which other ways I have to play for you to understand Keshe Foundation is not a game. It's not for your generator, it's not for your, what I call gas units, it's not for when you're sick. The beauty of it is when you use the systems, would you ever get sick again? or would you need to eat? Because now you're in a plasma condition. When you put a CO2 or a methane gas in the house, you're always afraid of what happens to it. Now, when you burn the methane, you're feeding yourself with the free energies of the gases it produces. The air man breathes is the way he elevates himself and lives on this planet. And the introduction of the enhancement gas units is for that purpose only. What I've done is no different than what I've done in the process of the use of the system in past 10 years. Look at what we have taught you, even in your diabetic cups, in your diabetic life, in using our systems in one way or another. I gave you the gases to breathe. I gave you the gases to drink. And I gave you the gases to cover the body, to walk away from sickness. Aren't we doing now the same thing? We're giving the gases for the planet to breathe. We gave you the waters, and we gave you the plasma energy units. We fed the surface of the planet with the waters, with the gas energy units connecting to the universal system, feeding the center of the planet. And with the gases, we have covered you. The body of the man is no different than a universal system. It's just to translate how to feed. When you have corona, we tell you to wash yourself, breathe from the cup, and drink from it. You breathe, you release the gases to bring the change of the air. You do the same thing with the waters you throw in the ocean. With the energy units, we create transformation of energy across the planet. You got to realize this process for the man and the earth applies in the same way and the same level in the universal community. We say we take energy from the cosmos, we take energy from the environment to give you the generators. But this energy comes from somewhere. And it cannot be put back in to the same environment polluted. It has to be in a version that it becomes a life savior. It becomes for the expansion of the use of the universal community. And this is where all our work has been.
Thank you all for attending today. I'll play the final disclaimer and then the meeting will end. But as we can see, these systems are quite profound and quite far-reaching, even across the universe.
Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.